A very good evening to everybody, and a very warm welcome to another live stream with me, 320 Sim Pilots, taking us today from here in Gibraltar, where we left our Airbus A321 last time. And we're going to do two flights today for the first time. We're going to head south. We're going to go first to Casablanca and then onwards to Marrakesh. Thank you all for coming along and joining us today. As I always say at the start of these things, I am a real-world Airbus pilot. But please, of course, this is all for just our home use in our flight simulator, and hopefully it can bring some extra context to what you do with your simulators. So straight off the bat, you're going to notice we've gone up in the world. We have ground handling. Isn't that fantastic? Look at our aircraft sat here, beautifully being looked after by all these ground services. They've already loaded on the bags. I did have the doors open, but that seems to have closed up now. But there we go. So I managed to get that working in Vulkan, which was a big success for me after a lot of Googling. Thank you all for coming along. I'll just jump into the chat and say hi. I can see Michael. Thanks for joining us, Michael Sakura. Dougal, thanks for coming along. And I can see you. I think that's you over there in the Jet 2 Chanex 737, ready to come with us south. Richard V, thanks for coming along, as always. And Tango Delta Swappy S, a lot of regular contributors and viewers here. Thanks, you guys. Ashley Judkins, hello. Thanks for coming along. A bit of talk about the Neo, which I'll talk about once the flight carries on. There's definitely some more interesting stuff that's come out for the ToLiss over the last sort of day. DG27, thanks for joining us. Glad to see you can make it for this one. I'm glad you enjoyed the Ground Speed Mini video. For those of you who haven't seen it, I did put up a tutorial on Ground Speed Mini, or sort of an explanation on the Ground Speed Mini function of the Airbus just 2 days ago, I think it was. So yeah, I'm glad that one has been gone down well. Aviation Alex, thanks for joining us again. And Glenn Jabers, great to see you. Fantastic. It looks like the chatbot is working. It usually takes me a while to figure out why it isn't, but there we go. So you can type in exclamation mark commands and you'll see all the commands. It's just a few minor things at the moment. It's just a little experiment of mine, really. Ariel F, thanks for coming along. I'm glad you could make it to this one. And Sakis Ars, Jack Gregory, Ian Morris, great. It's fantastic to see so many regular viewers. Matteo, a big contributor on the Discord as well. Thanks for coming along. Excellent. TT Spectre, Liam, we've got some new joiners, names I don't recognise straight away. So as ever, do let me know how the sound is working for you guys and if you can hear what's going on. Today we're not in the Neo, we are in our classic CFM 321, as you can see, first choice livery. I promised last time I would stop just choosing liveries that I like and fancy from all my previous time in Flight Simulator, but fortunately somebody in the Discord suggested a livery that I wanted to use, so here it is. It's the first choice livery. It sort of makes sense. It's the next successor to our previous Air 2000 livery because they became first choice, and you'll notice that this is in fact the same registration, so this is what that airplane became, and this is how they then painted it up. This then went on to become part of Thompson and then TUI, which is where it would have been now, although I don't know where the aeroplane itself has gone because they no longer, I don't think they operate any Airbuses anymore. They've gone to their 737s and Dreamliners. But here we are. So, do bear with me. I'll probably forget we have all this ground handling because it's the first time I've had it available. But it's pretty good, pretty accurate. I like it. There's loads of stuff around. This is what it's like on a normal turnaround, especially in an airport like Gibraltar, where you're looking out without any jet bridge or anything like that. So 2 sets of stairs, and you've got fire engine. Fire engines, some airports require them if you're refueling with passengers on board, so that could be why you'd have a fire engine there, even if hopefully there's no fire. Bags going on, and it's funny when you're doing your walk around, you come around the nose and you'll see in my walk around video a sort of rough idea of what we do. You have to be really careful. You've got so much stuff, big heavy machinery moving around, and there'll just be one person sat up high trying to get the thing around, and you've got to really keep your eyes open because it's quite a dangerous place to be, especially if you're not paying attention. Excellent. Okay, so let's get started. We'll jump into the flight deck, and we are sitting here, just the external power, but I think it is a ridiculously hot day. I say ridiculously, it is a hot day though, 25 degrees, so let's get that APU fired up. We're not going to go from cold and dark today, as you can see. We're sort of loaded up and ready to go. Right, let's see. And Richard V, the ground handling for this is the JAR Design Ground Handling Deluxe. Now, I bought it. It was recommended a while ago, and I bought it, but it's quite good. You just bring up this control widget, as you can see. Now I can just make cars drive away, which I quite like. So let's get rid of the that front baggage loader, the fire engine, the ambulance. We can get rid of the passenger coaches. All the passengers are on board now, and you'll see them just drive off. So yeah, really quite neat, although a little bit of interaction. I had to get a special version off a forum to make it work with Vulkan. That's the only thing. So like a lot of things, it still needs a bit of work to be updated. But they have released the update. It's just in a beta phase at the moment. Okay, so we've done our data page in its A page, as you can see, from Gibraltar to Casablanca, Golf Mike Mike November. You can put exclamation mark flight plan and you'll see the route we're taking. It's a very short flight. We're only going to go up to flight level 190, as you can see here. We're going to be FCA, which was their code, but their call sign was still Jet Set, just as it was as Air 2000, or that's certainly what I'm going to use. It is in there. I've loaded in the winds, so time to go to the flight plan. Something a bit different about Gibraltar. There's no departure charts. So if I go into here, I can see that the weather is going to be using runway 27, 200 at 12. Certainly a short runway like Gibraltar with a 321, we're sort of pushing it on the performance anyway, so we're not going to take any tailwind for takeoff. 25 degrees, so it's a hot day and that's not even a good headwind. It's a light headwind really, and sadly coming from the south means it's going to be coming from the rocks, so perhaps a little bit bumpy when we get in the air. But if I go here, there's just no departure charts, 0. So first thing I'd be thinking is, right, is there any sort of airport specific generic charts or information? And I couldn't find any noise abatement concerns or anything like that to tell us exactly what to do when we are departing. Lots of cautions about birds and so on. And this note about the road. There's a civil road that runs across the runway, which is quite famous. So we will see that. Maybe not as we taxi out. I think it's somewhere here. But there we go. So what we're going to do, take off when you have 1,000 meters visibility. Well, we know we've got that. So we'll just close that up. What we'll do is plan on heading out into the bay, and then I can use the radar reference chart, minimum altitudes, and I can see here in the bay 2,500 feet MSA and then a left turn. So I'm going to be visual for that, and I'm just going to climb straight ahead and make my left turn. So to do that, I can just put departure from LXGB, and I'm just going to put runway 27. No SID, there's none available. And we'll insert that. We'll bring it up and have a quick check of what that comes up as. Dougal saying I'm showing up as Nordwind Airline. So yeah, that's I'm using all these outdated liveries that don't really exist anymore. So that shows us going to 1510, so straight ahead to 1510, which I think should be pretty manageable. And then my flight plan has us going to Barpa, so I'm just going to type that in, Barpa. So often airports like this will say climb on a certain profile before turning en route. So we're going to do that to Barpa. I hope that works in terms of keeping us away from the terrain. But if it doesn't, we'll make our left turn early. There'll be no problem there. And then from Barpa, we go direct to Tango November Golf, which is there, just the VOR, Barpa, Tango November Golf. And now we're going to take the airway Romeo 10. And we'll take that to Barris. From Barris, Upper Bravo 11 to Bismee. And I've already put in a bit of an arrival at the other end, which I'll show you a bit later on. But certainly you'd want to be relatively well prepared for a short flight like this. Oh, let me keep that out of the way of the overlay. Yeah, then you'd certainly do some of your briefing before you set off. But flight level 190, you know, it's all going to happen pretty quickly. At Flight 24, good evening. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, the first choice, just like the Air 2000, gives a good holiday feeling, certainly. And we're heading south into the sun. And no ATC, sadly. Dougal's saying, yeah, absolutely. Aviaman, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us, or good morning, I'm imagining where you are. Thanks for coming along. Aviaman is another Simwings member. I think one of the, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the original creators with Dougal. So they work hard at that charity. The link's in my description. And Aviaman streams plenty of flights, raising money for that cause, which is great. So he's got plenty on his channel, and he flies a far more wide variety of aircraft than I do here. So far, just the ToLiss A321. Right. So that's our route, and then from Paris we're doing the Tussauds arrival, which takes us in Dura Bismi, Kotag, and into ToLiss. So pretty straightforward, and I have had a look at the charts already, so we would effectively have briefed that with the other crew. So that's our DIF secondary. It can be a copy. Would there be an emergency turn or some sort of equivalent here? I don't think so. We're heading out over the water to the south, but again, your airline would specify if they want you to do something different. Radio nav, well, there's absolutely no instrument departure here that we're using, so we'll just have the auto-tuned, no reason not to. And finally, init B. Now, performance-wise, this was interesting. I've gone with my SimBrief flight plan. I lowered the weight again to make sure we can get off of runway 27, so 0 fuel weight 62.4. And let's have a check of that. 62.4, apply. They wanted a fuel load of 5.9, which is roughly the route we're going on. So I'm going to try, let's go for 6.2, so 300 extra, and that's plenty, even with 15 minutes contingency. But if we can make it work, here we go. Excellent. It seems to work. I'm surprised, actually. The ToLiss figures are quite optimistic for takeoff, maybe because of the little bit of a headwind. So we're going to go and load in our init B. 0 fuel weight 62.4. Max 0 fuel 26.7. Gives us a block fuel of, and I'll check it's all on. Oh dear, it's getting a mess. Too many screens. 6.2. Takeoff weight 68.4. Which seems reasonable. That is light for a 321 after all. These can go pretty heavy up in the, well, let's see, what depends on your airline what they're rated to. Our SimBrief reckons 93.5 tons, so there you go. We are considerably below that. Okay, so that's init B, and finally performance. Runway 27, there's going to be no shift, and we're going to use flaps to 1. We won't bother with the THS value, and flexible temperature 41. I think this will be quite an interesting takeoff. We'll see how these numbers work out, because that seems quite optimistic. V1 137, so there is a split. VR 147, 10 knot split. V2 151. So that's interesting. With a split like that, it shows us that we are runway limited. So there'll be 10 knots where even if we have an engine failure, we're going to carry on and get ourselves into the air because we just won't stop in time. So we're starting to see some of the performance limitations. I'm really surprised it's flap 1. Out of interest, if we did flap 2, see the speed's quite low. This could be a good chance to do a flap 2 or even a flap 3. Let's change our mind. Let's do flaps 2. 27 no shift. Swap that over to flaps 2. And we're going to do a flexible temperature 44. So slightly better engine thrust rating. So a bit less power. V1 132. So an earlier decision point, but a rotate speed of 140 and a V2 143. So I find, I've said this a million times, that the ToLiss speeds with flap 2 and 3 are usually too fast, and it becomes a bit unrealistic trying to take off. But when you're using a short runway and it's restricted, you get these much nicer lower numbers. So I think that could be quite a good chance to use that. So there it is, flaps 2, and we've got our speeds in there. So good, so that's something different. Okay, so we have our fuel on board. Let's get rid of that fueler. Oh, look at this, excellent. So now we would get rid of, don't need the baggage, that's all on. And I can't see the fuel, there it is. Oh, no, fuel truck there, so he's disconnecting, excellent. And they're all driving away. Oh, through each other again. I'd say that this front truck, which looks like a catering truck, that can go. And let's close up some of the doors. They're all auto. About time to close the doors, I'd say. And then we can remove the steps. The rear catering truck can go. And there we go. We're starting to get there. Starting to look like a... Oh, got to be a bit careful with this. It's not quite perfect, I think, because of the Vulcan update. But there we go. Okay, so we got our performance in. Now there's no ATC, no cleared flight levels, so I've just put in 19,000, which is our cruise, and we'll just set standard once we get underway. In terms of our taxi, so I've got lots of charts because I've got the charts ready for the other end. We're going to push back, taxi out Bravo, Echo, then do a little backtrack into the threshold for 27, and it's going to be a short runway takeoff. Now, there's nothing really different to do about that. We're going to use our standard technique. What we're not going to do is waste lots of runway as we get closer to the threshold. We're not going to roll down the runway waiting for clearance or anything like that. We're not going to waste a single meter. We're going to get ourselves lined up and then do a stopped takeoff, so a stationary takeoff where we put 50%, then we can release the brakes and get going, and that way it's just a bit better. There's nothing to stop you doing a rolling takeoff if you're ready for it, but it's just we don't want to waste any runway. Right, let's just a quick look to see if I've missed anything in the chat. Dougal, the arrival, yes, it took me a little while to work through this. We're going to be doing, let me just show you from the MCDU, and then hopefully it's the same for you. What I put in is 35 right, ILS Zulu, via COTAG using the 201 Alpha. So 201 Alpha via COTAG, ILS 35 right Zulu. Mazen, hello, thanks for joining us. YT subs, thank you very much, that's very kind of you, thanks for joining. Pleased you're enjoying it. Ian Morris says, what is typed in if you do need to shift your takeoff position? Well, you put in the difference in meters. So the ToLiss apparently does account for this. So if we wouldn't do it in Gibraltar, but we're going to do 2 flights here. So we could talk about it in Casablanca. But say we were taking off from Echo. Now we wouldn't in Gibraltar, but if we were, you'd need to know that distance from the threshold, what that difference is. And when you know that, you would type that into there, into takeoff shift as a meters. That's why that M's there. And that way, when you set thrust for takeoff, the airplane will update its position. So at the moment, it knows we're at Gibraltar because we aligned the IRSs to Gibraltar. But unless you specifically enter the stand into these lat long coordinates, it actually just has a reference point for the airport. So it'd be pretty close, but not perfect. So in reality, you wouldn't see this 000 just yet. You'd have it sort of all saying 1 mile or something like that, because it could be a mile between you and the reference point, depending how big the airport is. Then when you take off, as long as the GPS is working, when you set thrust, the airplane will refix that position in its own mind, and it will say, right, they've set takeoff thrust, they are at the runway here. If you put in the shift, it will know that you started from further on the runway. So that's what that's there for. But as long as you've got GPS, it doesn't actually do anything. It's just a reminder. Before, Airbuses didn't used to have GPS, so you wouldn't have to put in a takeoff shift if you're using full length, but if you were using an intersection, you would. Otherwise, when you set thrust, the airplane would think you're at the full length, and you'd actually be sort of further down the runway, and then that error would be in there for the whole flight. But now with GPS, it knows where you are when you set thrust. It can just see it. So it's less important than it used to be. But there you go. Right. Let's have a look. Anything else I've missed? Flight 24, enjoying the bus. Yeah, I quite like it. Ryan Videos 94, thanks for joining us. Good to see you again. And Salfi Fadzli, thanks for coming along. Brett Maxwell, another one. I'm glad you're enjoying the plane, Brett. I hope the videos can help you out with it if you have any questions. And obviously, there'll be more videos to come and the Discord and so on. Okay, right. So let's get that going to ARC. We've got the APU, and once again, I've forgotten. Oh, no, we've got to actually start it. That's a classic mistake. So we'll get that going. Fuel's on, so that can go on. Passengers should be sitting down by now, you'd have thought. And how many passengers did we have? I've totally forgotten what the ToLiss calculated to be. We've got 125, so yeah, we'll just leave it as normal. A hot day here. I think we're pretty much set to go otherwise. Once we can get rid of that ground power unit, get rid of the condition page on there. And so let's go through X checklist, open checklist. Oh, and you guys are used to see me mangle my way through this. And we'll start with before starts. Excuse me, there we go, right. So it's helpfully reminding me to call better pushback, so let's do that. And we know there's only one way really out of here. I wonder how, from this stand, they would do it, because there's not really room to push us back into there. So it could be that you'd have to go here and then backtrack from full length. Interesting. With no other traffic around except Dougal, hopefully. Let's see. I reckon we will go. I mean, we're still going to block Dougal, so let's go this way, and then we can backtrack onto the runway and head out there, and then Dougal can push the other way from there. So that can go there.
Ground to cockpit. Plan acknowledged. Call me through the menu when you're ready.
Don't know whether they breathe. Start pushback. Oh.
Ground to cockpit.
Oof.
Tow is driving up.
That gave me a heart attack. Again, if there are any problems, if we get a sudden loss of everything, it should all be saved in the autosave that has saved us before. So don't panic, guys. If I suddenly disappear, we should get it back. Finish altitude, code. Right, let's get that little flow ready. So thrust levers are definitely at idle. That's closed with the red. That's closed with the red. APU bleed is on, so we can remove the ground power. And now I've got to do that in two places, I suppose. Get rid of ground power. And it's going to be in ground handling, ground power. I wonder what happens. Does it drive away? What does it do? I know, it's just disconnected. So the wire goes, which is good, but now we've got our tug barging into it. In fact, we're going to have to get rid of all of those.
All doors and hatches are closed, ready to connect.
There they go. Otherwise, we won't be pushing back very fast. Next will be, obviously, yeah, so we'll get the beacon on. Transponder goes to transponder, and this should be ready to run. Okay, so we've got our fuel, 6.2, and flights 41 minutes, yeah, 243, that's all looking good. So performance on that side, typically this is the format. So pilot flying will have the performance page, pilot monitoring will have the flight plan page. It's just typical, it's not an absolute massive rule, but certainly it's good to have the performance page up on the PF side. That's more important, really. Contact ATC, and we'll start the pushback when we're ready.
So connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake.
So they're now ready to go. Let me have a look. And Selfie's asking, what's the reason for trim setting left blank? Well, you can put it in as a reminder. Some aircraft, when you do takeoff config, or if they sense that there's numbers aren't quite adding up, it will tell you. But a lot of places don't do that all the time. Just see if I missed anything else. Heck UK, thanks for joining us. Glad you could come along. Thanks for saying, well, thanks for joining us today. Yeah, glad you're enjoying the videos. Aerial F, the F, S, and O speeds. What are these explained in one of your tutorials? I have not been able to find it. No, that's a good point. I haven't actually talked specifically about what those terms are. So maybe we'll chat about that or do another video at another time. And yeah, there's the Discord link if anyone needs it. Yeah, weather is lovely here, Dougal. Agreed. Okay. Right, Dougal is ready to go. I'll stop delaying things. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that would be possible. Curious if anyone knows how they push back normally. Let me know. And I should be on Unicom 1228. Look at this. I feel like I almost know what I'm doing with VATSIM sometimes, and then I suddenly forget. Let's check. There's no controllers online here. No, there is a center though who might try and call us, but there we go. Gibraltar ground, jet set 218, pushing from stand 2 to face east. No, that's not true, is it? We're facing west. Sorry, jet set 218, we're pushing to face west. Brakes released. Start the clock.
Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
It was safely there. Okay. Oh, look at this. This is the second successful pushback we've had in a row. I can't believe it. Absolutely can't believe it. So great, yeah, there'll be a lot of happy holiday makers in the back of one of these Airbuses getting ready for their week in the sun. Let's get going with those engines then. So that goes to ignition. Usually takes a second to divert the air, but there it is already. We've got pressure. Master 2 can go on. We're going to do both engines for our taxi out today. But again, we may in Marrakesh, for the flight to Marrakesh, have a chance to do a single engine at one of the ends there. It'd be quite interesting to see. It is my first time doing two sectors. Obviously, please don't feel obliged to stay for absolutely everything, but it's two short flights. That's why I thought it'd be worth trying, and we can have a look at a turnaround and see what sort of things we would do in the Airbus on a shorter turnaround and how it's possible. Really, it's quite possible to turn an Airbus around in 25 minutes, depending on plenty of other things aside from the pilots. Obviously, it's a lot of hard work from a lot of people to do that. So there we go. That seems to be coming online. Back in the CFMs. So we get our nice N1 clearly displayed at the top. Where is the available? There it is. Starting engine 1. There's that PTU running. Reset the timer. These do start up quicker than the IAE engines, absolutely. They don't windmill for as long. The Neo mod is really interesting. I have got it working in the sim, which is great. So we may use the Neo in the future, but sadly it misses a lot of the obviously the actual performance and interior sort of differences. So I am looking forward to an official one that covers those. And there we go, getting ready.
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
Right. Brake set to park. There you can go.
Disconnecting tow. Stand by.
Tango Delta. Do pilots have to coordinate the coming and going of all those service vehicles in the real as well? No. I can only speak for what I've done, but no, there'll be somebody who's responsible for those organisations on the ground, and that role keeps changing in different airlines and different airports. But generally, no. What will happen occasionally is something unexpected will be needed. So if we need the special Ambulift, it's called, which can take people who need assistance.
Tow is disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the right. We'll see you next time and have a safe flight.
There they go. Yeah, if they need to take somebody who maybe has a wheelchair or something like that, then and it wasn't prepared in time, then we may have to call up. So sometimes when things aren't arriving, maybe you need fuel and they didn't think you'd need fuel because you were tankering, stuff like that, then we'll get involved. But generally, things like cleaning and fuelers and so on should happen pretty much automatically. Same for de-icing. Oh no, from the right we can't see them. I always forget that. There we go. There's the wave. Right, let's get focused back in on this. So that started up, back to norm. And we can turn off the AP bleed and the APU. Then we're going to come down here. And what I'm not going to forget today is the trim. So 27.6, which will be almost spot on in the middle. 27.6, somewhere there. Arm those spoilers. Set that to 0. Flaps to 2. How exciting. And I think that should put us in a pretty good place. What we're going to do is, because I've actually managed to get the disconnect button working, I think we might do the flight controls as we head down the runway, although not necessarily what we'd do in real life, but it will give Dougal a chance to get taxiing behind us. Dougal's not hearing on Unicom. Interesting. Have I got the right frequency? 1228. And I think I do. What have I done wrong? We'll see. We'll see as I get going. We'll see when I do my radio call. Jetset 218 taxiing via Alpha to enter runway 27 to backtrack and line up for takeoff to the west. Okay, hopefully that's worked. Get those lights on. And we're just going to go right here. Can't see anybody around. No one's on approach. No one's over there. Brakes released. And as I know we're going to immediately enter the runway, let's get the strobe lights and landing lights all on, so we're as visible as possible. Then we can get ourselves around the corner, do our flight control checks and other little bits. Let's do our brake check. It seems to be working. Excellent. And Chanex 322, read you 5 from Jetset 218. How do you read me?
Yeah, 5 by 5, thank you.
Excellent, thanks. Yeah, I'm not sure. Quite likely I didn't have something set up quite right. Okay, onto the runway we go. Yeah, great livery. I quite like this detail that the strobes light up on the ground even in the daylight. They are very, very bright. Although obviously the newer aircraft have slightly fancier systems. So there's more traditional bulbs, and then there's the LED bulbs on the Sharklet aircraft. So let's get this right. I want to take off going to my right, so I need to turn left. And that's something you really have to get right. A lot of runways and taxiways will have signs saying turn left for 09 and right for 27 or something really obvious, because it would really mess up the flow of things, especially in a smaller airport like this, if you were to get that wrong and head the wrong way down the runway. Okay, so pointing down this way.
Runway 09, 400 meters remaining.
On 09, let's do our flight controls, and this is really exciting. I hope this works. So full up, full down, neutral, full left, full right, neutral, and rudder. So I press the disconnect. Look at that, amazing. I'm sure you guys have already had this sorted, but that's finally got that working. Full left and full right on the rudder using the what I'm talking about there is the disconnect push button here, which you can assign in the ToLiss, and that allows you to use the rudder without using the nose wheel steering. So that's that done. FO would do their side. Let's get that radar. Predicted wind should certainly go on, even if the radar doesn't need to because of the good weather. We're going to go down there for our bay. Let's put that to TARA. Max auto brake. Takeoff config. Ding the cabin crew. We're going to go packs. Let's do our packs off today because of the performance restriction. It's quite possible that's what you would need to do. Otherwise, we're all set. So one pack off for now. And I'll talk about the fuel savings that gives a little bit later on. And we'll get ourselves lined up and ready to go. Somebody shout if you know what I've missed. There's always something at this point. A bit fast for that, 15 knots, be a bit of a swing. Amazingly maneuverable, even the 321. You can spin it around on a just over 30-meter runway, and you'd be having no problem at all. It's quite impressive. So
Remaining.
here we go, runway 27 then. We've got our numbers in, that's checked. We're going up to 19,000 feet. We're going to climb straight ahead in the bay, then make our left turn. Engines are warm because I started that timer late. One of the packs is off, but that is absolutely fine. And let's see, how are we doing it? So I'm just checking the comments to see if anyone is missing or I've asked anything that I've missed. Strobe lights, yep, the Christmas tree. Excellent. Okay, let's get ourselves underway for our first of these two little hops. So holding it on the parking brake, I just announced that. Jet set 218, taking off runway 27 to the west. And start our timer.
FX322 holding short 27.
50% 10-1 and all stable, brakes released, 2 clicks forward. Man flex 44 SRS, order thrust is blue. There's no runway because there's no ILS here, so it won't show up. Wind is from the left.
Short runway.
XRAS is getting upset. I'm not surprised. It didn't on landing, but there we go. Through 80 knots, releasing that side stick pressure. It's through 100 knots. We're going to fly over that bump that was on landing. There's our V1. Rotates, and here's the bump. But we're fortunately just about getting airborne before it. Positive climb. Gear up. Nav mode engaged. And this looks much better for flap 2 takeoff. Nice high nose. Speeds back. Even this is a bit fast probably, but yeah, pretty good. And away we go. Now we're going to pass our 10 feet and make our left turn. Just get rid of that checklist. So, lever climb. Let's bring those back to the climb gate. So thrust climb, order thrusts. Get our turn going. Don't want to fly straight at those hills. Now we're above that green F. I'm going to bring the flaps up by just to flap 1. So they go to there. And even if I was taking off flap 3, above the green F, they would go to flaps 1. So it's slightly unusual, but there we go. Oh, I did one of the packs. There we go. That's no good at all. I suppose that would save a tiny bit of performance. Packs are on. We've set the thrusts. Flaps to come next. Just get a flyby of that. Why not? There we go. Fortunately, heading somewhere even more sunny, which is a nice feeling. And let's see, where are we going? We're going up to a flight level 190, so I'm just going to set standard now. Above the S-speed, flaps can go to 0. There they go. Nice and light today, so our green dot is yeah, pretty low for a 321. Not bad at all. Get rid of the timer. Get rid of those ground spoilers and those nose wheel lights that we don't need anymore. And up we go. Fantastic. Right, quick look in the chat. Sorry if I'm missing things. I'm terrible for that. TT Spectre saying the weather's not great where they are. Oh dear, bit of a storm overhead. Hopefully we don't have any of that on this flight. TT Spectre saying, do you often do single engine taxis? I've done them in the stream a couple of times. I'm sure lots of airlines do them. It's generally longer taxis, so bigger airports. You won't bother with them at small airports where it just becomes more of a nuisance. You'd end up wasting time sitting at holding points and so on. Raz3 Raid says, can you recommend a video on how to contact ATC on VATSIM? Or could you make one? That's request has come up before. Very recently, V1 Simulations, who you're probably familiar with, did a stream on VATSIM and getting started with their traffic control, which was really good. It was based in America, so there were some slight differences. So I do think about making a video to complement it, as it were, to talk about some of the stuff in Europe, although V1 seems to have a good idea of that. So there's one video out there at the moment, but I haven't made one just yet. Martin Skov, thanks for joining us. Good to see you. And Corrosive Moon as well, a regular contributor on the Discord. DG27 says, big storage for gas in the airport, do you know? Yeah, those big rounds, they look like the old gas storage things in the UK. They're actually used to keep fuel at airports quite often. Sadly, I should have seen that comment earlier, but we're well on our way now. But yeah, there was one sitting just by the runway. I'm not sure if that's there in the real Gibraltar, it's just there in the scenery we've got here. And up we go. S&B, thanks for joining us again. Yeah, we're going to see a turnaround. Ian Morris, yeah, absolutely. Aviation fuel makes the most sense. That's what I would imagine it would be there. No problem, Dougal, if you have to go. Absolutely, go and enjoy your dinner. Heck, UK, yeah, Gibraltar is where the runway has a road crossing. So you talk to Gibraltar before you get there, you sort of coordinate your arrival, and then you can, let's just do our 100 checks, but yeah, then they will close the road for a bit, and you often see lots of people out, and there's some great pictures from those runways as they wave and so on. Right, done the landing lights. To go off. Seatbelts nice and go off, nice and smooth. Let's have the airport button on our side, constraints on the other side. Then we're going to here, RadNav, well that was all cleared anyway, secondary, I'm just going to copy. VORs, ADF we've done, Optimum flight level, FOB. Yeah, flight level 190, Optimum's 371, but that's what we planned on. So we'll just go there. And sometimes it's nicer, as I said in my previous video, if you've got a really short flight like this, I mean, how long have we got in the air now? 16:59, so we should be landing in half an hour. You don't want to spend your whole time climbing up and descending again. It can add to your workload, and it probably wouldn't be flight planned like that, just because it's a nuisance for air traffic control in busier parts of the world. If you're climbing through all the airspace and then coming back down straight away again, you're sort of in the way of everything. Right, we can get rid of our Gibraltar charts, and off we go to Marrakesh. Sorry, to Casablanca. Goodness me, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, Tango Delta, it is a bumpy runway, and it was a real bumpy runway for the landing as well. I did take off on 09 before to see how it would be, and it sort of puts you into the air a bit early, and then you sort of settle back on the runway. So I was hoping we could use 27 today for takeoff. I did have a look, and Richard V kindly put the link up or a description of how to flatten the runway, but it seems to work, correct me if I'm wrong, on custom scenery, not generic scenery, but I don't know, I may be wrong there. So I couldn't find the file to edit for Gibraltar because I don't have it as a different scenery. Oh, I see it registered as a landing on takeoff. Excellent. So there you go. Yeah, so a 9 feet per minute landing. That's the first one. We'll count that as our first one today. Pavel, thanks for joining us. Good to see you. Finished my flight. Pavel has finished their flight on the first time in VATSIM. Excellent. Glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, very good. It's great to get onto VATSIM. I think it adds another level, definitely, to the immersion. We've got a good rate of climb here, so I mean, there's no traffic above us. The TCAS is all on, but what I might do, even so, 3,000 within 3,000 feet, probably worth getting that under control. Shows you the performance we've got today with that. I mean, we've flown into a headwind, so that helps a little bit, but crucially, we're just light. We're already 67 tons. That's great performance, yeah. So let's get that under control. Bring it down. Let's do 2,000 feet per minute for a little bit. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily have to if the airspace was quiet and you knew it was, but in busier airspace you certainly would. Avia Man, glad you enjoyed the flyby. Pavel. Yeah, it's getting used to the call signs is a big part of it. It's I mean, I struggle because I'm constantly swapping call signs here on VATSIM, so I continuously miss my one. So you're not alone there. Excellent. Approaching our level off. Yeah, 2,000 feet a minute, probably a bit fast, but still not impossible. There's our outstar. And we'll get leveled off and I'll show you guys the charts for the next bit. This is what you find at these flight levels, is that we're actually in between cloud layers. That's not uncommon. Probably if there is weather around, it depends what it is, but up at flight level 350 and above, you're more likely to be above it. Certainly it's rarer to be stuck in the cloud, but down here you could find yourself in cloud the whole way, especially in the UK. Okay, transponder needs to go to below. I say needs to, as we always say. It's nice, doesn't have to, but it's nice to do. And we'll do our system page scan. Again, this checklist is available on the Discord. It's a procedure. It's modified from the original creators, and Matteo has kindly put some work in, and we fiddle with it a bit to make it work for us. Right, let's have a look at our systems pages. I'm just going to keep pressing all. Everything looking good. Packs are working surprisingly hard. I suppose it could be quite hot in the cabin. Excellent. Fuel burnt 1.1, so round that to 1.2 plus 5 tons. So that'd be 67.2, and we went without 6871. So that adds up pretty much. So we know there's nothing too exciting going on there. APU's off, cabin's working away. Excellent. That's what we like to see. I don't think when you press all that the status page eventually comes up if there's nothing there, but I'm not sure. That's a detail I need to have a think about. What did I see in there? The pressurization page, if we go to that. Right, so now we're only at flight level 190. It's just going to sit here, 4,480 feet. Yeah, so when you fly lower, the cabin doesn't go as high. It doesn't need to. So the airplane doesn't push it or anything like that. It gives you the chance. So yeah, quite nice. Right, we'll just get rid of that. I think I've got a message from somebody on the VATSIM. 1255. Wow, look at this. Excellent. We're going to get some sort of ATC. 1255. Where are we going? We're going to Paris Center. Good day. Jet set 218, flight level 190 to Paris. Oh, no, we're going to Sobma, but close enough.
Jet set 218, good evening, Squawk 4360.
Squawk 4360, jet set 218. 4360, and that does happen. And obviously we only had 2,000 in there, so there would likely be something like that. Sakis R says, flaps 1 and 2 takeoff related with the length of the runway or some other factor? It could be a few things. It could be the runway length, or it could be the obstacles after the takeoff sector. So with a long runway, probably flaps 1. If it's a short runway, probably flaps 2 or 3. But if it's a medium length runway and there's an obstacle in the way, then it would be more likely to be flap 1, because the obstacle further out will mean you need better climb performance when you're in the air.
Jet set 218, radar contact, proceed direct to BC, report ready for descent, 35 right units.
Jet set 218, thank you. And sorry, could you confirm the waypoint direct to?
Yes, the waypoint is BC, Bravo, India, Sierra Mike, India.
Thank you, direct to Bismi, jet set 218. There we go, we need to get ready. I should stop talking. Bismi, which we're going to, and nav. And Dougal's saying that TCAS isn't working, so I'll let you know if we get any TCAS arrays off you again. Excellent. Corrosive Moon, I use the normal ToLiss view to see the radar vectors. Sorry, to see the flight directors. I tend to use this as the ToLiss default forward-looking view. So it sounds like they're using the southerly runway. So let's get going. Let's get these charts going. Sorry, guys. I will try and get back into the chat. Yeah, It's gone to 8 knots, varying from the north. So I think 3.5 should be expected for the runway. And BISME is on our arrival. So if they change that, we'll have to work hard. But at the moment, I'm going to BISME from here, 6,000 feet to Godpo. There's no real terrain, 3,800 feet there at COTAG. And let's check that's coded in. Scroll in, zoom. And for this, we'll put up constraints. And we need the MCDU. BISME, Godpo, COTAG. And anybody who's been here before, do tell me if I'm doing this wrong. COTAG is our initial approach fix, so we're not going to go beyond that until air traffic control lets us. After that, we have this next chart, which is here, the initial approaches, which tells us that 3,800 MSA, and effectively gets us ready for the ILS. So from COTAG, course of 261, which we've got 3,600 feet, which is the MSA, to Sierra Lima Kilo VOR. Then we can turn north for our ILS, which is on this chart. We're going to fly down the ILS. I'm hoping we're landing on the right runway, because if we are, that makes it easier when we're on the ground, because we're going to land on the right, and then just take a right turn, 90-degree turn-offs, and head in there to our stand. It's a huge runway, 3,700 meters, so I'm going to go for low auto brakes. It could be quite hot down here, so I don't want to cook the brakes. Low auto brakes, and we'll do flap full, because that'll just take a bit of drag out of the, add a bit of extra drag, which will make it easier for the brakes to stay cooler. Let's put in that weather then, 020 at 8, as we now see from Routing Mini, quite important. Obviously more important on the really windy days, that's where you'll notice 26 degrees on the ground, so quite warm. QNH of 1016. Not that warm really, I suppose it's a bit later in the day now. Minima from the ILS, which is here. And we have got to scroll down to the bottom, must remember to do that. We're at code C aircraft, 870, minima, 870. Config full, transition level is there. I mean, you'd get that from the ATIS, but it doesn't seem to be working. Go in altitude, let's check the GORAM. We're going to go straight ahead to the Newer NDB, then turn left onto 225 from Newer and proceed to Burbo, climbing to 4,000 feet. So 4,000 feet for that procedure. Let's check the coding is working. Newer, overfly, left to Burbo to hold 4,000, and that'll keep us safe with the terrain. Excellent. Maximum 220 knots in the hold, so we'll make sure we obey that. But we can be clean at 210, so that is absolutely fine. Brett Maxwell says, any particular order for starting engines? I've seen videos where it varies. You'd normally start engine 2, then engine 1, but if you're going to taxi out on one engine, you'd start engine 1, then engine 2. So there you go. Apparently in the USA, I'm assuming this is, there's other streamers who've talked about it, they do engine 1 first. Because if you start engine 1, at least you have the option of doing single engine taxi. If you start engine 2, you don't. So that's pretty much how it goes. Richard V has put up a good field of view calculator onto the Discord if any of you are interested, and that will give you an idea. What it means is in the cruise like this, you could have a slightly more zoomed out view, gives you a better view of the overhead panel and a bit more of an idea of what the pilots can actually see in their peripheral vision and so on. But then it's better to have a slightly more zoomed in view for your approach and landing, which is where this view I think is pretty good. So this is the ToLiss forward view. Swappy S, I'd suggest the slightly more zoomed in view for landing. It's an interesting one. It's the restrictions of Flight Simulator, because the reality is for landing you use a lot of your peripheral vision, and it's sort of subconscious. You don't realize it, but because you're taking in all those visual cues from outside, that'll be what you start to judge the ground speed and so on with. But yeah, it's one of those things. Brett Maxwell, oh, you're in Australia. Excellent. Oh, glad to see you on here. I hope it's not... is it early morning there? I'm not entirely sure. Pavel, yes, Casablanca, we're nearly there. Excellent. Corrosive Moon says, I have to have it zoomed so I can see the FD. If there is a custom view where I can see the FD and runway, that would be great. Well, the only way... And the FDs, I can see what you mean. I mean, I'm on a sort of 22-inch 1080p monitor, and I sometimes do this. I think the flight directors are maybe a little bit on the thinner side. I think they're a little bit easier to see on the real aircraft. But that'd be my only thought there. So I sometimes will bring up the PFD for landing and put it here or there, which I do in quite a lot of my videos, just to give me a slightly better idea. As you get lower down in the last sort of 200 feet, you should be, to be honest, looking out anyway, unless you're doing an auto land, so you get the chance to see where you're trying to drive the airplane towards in the touchdown zone, as opposed to sort of following the flight directors, because I think they get a little bit Well, they do get a bit more sensitive in the real airplane, but I think they get even more sensitive in the ToLiss. The glide slope seems to go up and down like mad just in the last couple of 100 feet. Not to say that's ToLiss, that could be X-plane, I don't know. But yeah, slightly more fiddly. TT Spectre, does the cabin altitude hit 8,000 at maximum allowable out, or does it flatline before that point? No, it'll go to about 8,000 feet if you're up at 390. So it just depends where you cruise. So it should have steadied itself. Oh, not that one. Pressurization. Yeah, it's steadied at 4,480. It's just going to sit there now because we're in our cruise. As you go up to sort of 300 and above, it'll just go to the maximum delta P, and then the altitude will start climbing up until you're at 8,000. I don't know. I haven't experimented with it much in the ToLiss though. Bookie Meta said, I did a flight on VATSIM this morning. I had to go around because of the traffic. It was fun. Yeah, excellent. Good fun. And that's where VATSIM has its own surprises, which create a bit more of an immersive experience, certainly. Let's see if we can get a bit of a... not much to see out the window, sadly, for the passengers, but I'm sure they're excited to be travelling anyway. Pavel Koshov, thanks for that. Expect ILS approach 35 right. Excellent. That's what I was hoping. Transition level 50. Ah, okay. Interesting. Bit lower. Northerly wind, 10 kilometers, QNH of 1016. Perfect. Enjoy Flight 24. Enjoy your tagine. Sounds very nice. Dougal disconnected. Well, hopefully we see you again, maybe on the next sector or after your dinner. Joe Stone. Why are the flaps... thanks for joining us firstly, Joe. Good to see you. It's a name I don't recognise. Why are the flaps set to 1 on certain Airbuses when the temperature is above 30? Now that's quite common. I don't know if it applies to all Airbus aircraft, so long haul as well. But yeah, it's to do with a sensor. So when it's very hot out, the aeroplane could get confused and think that there's hot air leaking from the leading edge of the wing, and it can cause a caution that takes time to reset, and engineers need to work on it. So by leaving the slats out, it prevents that problem. It helps them. I don't know if it cools it down. I think that's the idea, but it keeps the sensors cooler or happier for whatever reason. So what happens is, on the Airbus, the only heated surfaces, we've got the engine nacelles on both sides are heated, and the outboard 3 slats. So here, and the inboard ones aren't heated. So hot air from the engines is taken out of the bleed, same air that goes into the cabin, but instead of being cooled down by the air conditioning packs, it's just sent straight to the wings, or not straight to the wings, but it's sent to the wings and used to heat up the wings, and that can get rid of ice forming on the leading edge, but only on these ones here. The tail isn't heated. It looks like it is, but it isn't. Because modern airliners like this, they don't pick up as much ice as slower or older designs do. They're quite amazing, really. So what can happen is, on a very hot day, if these slats are put in like this and the sun's heating them up and so on, I'm not entirely sure of the technical reasons, but it can eventually cause a caution where the airplane thinks there's a problem with the bleed system. Because if there's a hole in one of these hot air pipes in the slats that's letting hot air escape, that could be very bad. It could take a lot of performance out of the engine or all sorts of things. You don't want hot air, and it is very hot air being blasted around where you don't want it. So you could get a caution like that. So that's why that happens. DG27 says, is the windmilling correct on the Neo engine that's come out? I did see in V1 stream that it was windmilling quite fast. I have used it for only a few minutes and I didn't notice too much. Now the engines do windmill on the ground. The Neo fans are very big, so they catch a lot of air, but they're also a bit heavier. I don't know yet, to be honest, DG. I'll have to have a look and see. 3:20 a.m. Thank you, Brett. So I'm glad to see you staying up early, or waking up early, or staying up late. I'm not sure which one that is for you, but there you go. Swappy S says, there you go. So the developer says that the Leap mod is still a bit too fast on the windmilling. Dougal McTavish still here, but my multitasking days are not what they were. Excellent. Good to see you still here then. Right, so I've missed my top of descent in plenty of these, so let's try to avoid it. There's our alternate GMME. So we're heading into sort of slightly more unfamiliar territory through what we've done so far. So I thought this would be quite a fun video. Yeah. What do you guys think of the livery? If you type in !livery, you'll get a link to it. It's another great piece of work. Really nice that people put the time and effort to putting these up for us to enjoy on our Airbuses. And I've got a few more planned, but if you have any you'd like to see us fly around in, do let us know in the Discord or wherever. or in the comments, and yeah, that can hopefully be arranged. Trying to keep them roughly topical, but we'll soon run out of liveries, so we'll probably end up flying around as a American Airlines or something soon in in Germany or something like that. But there we go. Thanks, Liz05. Yep, there you go. Aeronef, yeah, I agree. Very simple, very classic sort of lines. Nice swooping line. Ricardo, oh, thanks for joining us. Captain, in X-Plane I see at the airport when one runway has PAPI and the other does not. Is it the same in real life, for example, Fort Lauderdale? Now I don't know Fort Lauderdale personally, but it's certainly possible to have no PAPIs or some PAPIs or PAPIs for one runway. They're not an absolute requirement, and different charts show it differently. Where's our ILS charts? So a lot of charts will show you what you should expect to see if all services are working fine. Where's it going to be written here? There you go. So PAPI, and a high intensity approach lighting system 2. So this is a well-equipped runway that's telling us here. Let me bring that up. Every tab, blitz. Yeah, so PAPIs on both sides and so on. So that gives you a good clue. But it's possible you could have a NOTAM saying they're both broken. And they're just nice to have, really. I can't think of many, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't think of any situations really where they are an absolute requirement for sort of airline flying, especially off instrument approaches. If you were doing a low visibility approach, which I think is a separate chart here, this is just our Cat 1 ILS Zulu, then there's loads of requirements as to exactly what lights you need available in here. Oh, just getting a ding. What have I missed? I do not know. That was an interesting one. Oh, I know what it was. It was our X-Pilot, wasn't it? So let's get rid of that before we have trouble. And it's just a broadcast. Sorry, I must stop getting distracted by those things. Yeah, so in low visibility, there's all sorts of different lights that must not be working. So you'd be surprised if you're doing a Cat 3 approach, it can be that you don't need the approach lights, which sounds strange, but because you're not going to be visual until you're basically over the runway anyway, it just doesn't really matter so much. What you do need in that case will be the runway lights, because you definitely need to be able to see the rollout and keep yourself on the centre line. Fly Guy 1, hi, thanks for joining us. Just getting ready for our descent now. So let's have a look at our ILS. Let's make sure we haven't missed anything. 3,600 feet platform, that's fine. And then we're going to descend 345, 2.7 degree glide slope. So that's interesting, slightly shallower. So we're expecting slightly lower rate of descent. And as a result, probably a slightly higher nose attitude than normal. So when we go visual, we need to make sure we don't constantly try and adjust the nose to what we're used to seeing. We just leave it where it is. It should be a stable approach. What's the elevation? That will become important. 580 feet on there. Descend flight level 70 and direct to Kotog, jet set 218, thank you. Okay. Just heard another noise, I don't know what that one was. So 70 is in. He's asked us to descend now, not when ready. So let's start off with a VS of 1,000. And there it is, down to flight level 70. He's also said direct to Kotog, which we know is sort of on a base leg. So that'll bring our arrival slightly closer in. So let's just check we've got this set up. India November Romeo, has it tuned it? Yes, it has, finally. 109.9, course 347. 2 degrees out, that's interesting. Can I change it in the ToLiss? Rare to have to do that. No, it doesn't work, but we'll see. Could be a magnetic variation, out of date, something like that. But there we go. The ILS should work regardless. You don't normally have to set that yourself. Progress. Let's go GMMN 35 right. Performance we've done. That's all loaded in. And the arrival there. Fuel prediction, plenty of fuel, 1.8 extra, so no problems there. Secondary can be a copy. Yeah, so that's interesting. So we've got a slightly shallower approach. Radio altimeter should come alive at 2,500 feet. So that's going to be about 3,000 feet above the ground. And thank you very much for the subscription to James. So 2,500 feet plus 500, so about 3,000 feet above the ground. So somewhere as we come down the ILS, so 3,000 feet QNH will be about 2,500 feet above the ground in this case today. The runway is actually 655, so maybe even higher, 3,100 feet. But because of that shallow approach, maybe a little bit earlier than normal, maybe around 8 miles, something like that, instead of 7.5. Okay, let's go here and get ready to begin our descent. Michael, thank you very much for subscribing. Very kind of you. Hope you enjoy the stream and the future videos. Okay, let's go. Managed descent. Thrust idle descent. I haven't done a managed one for a long time. And that white line is because I've got secondary displayed here. So let's get rid of that. Let's have a quick final check then of where we would expect to land. To vacate. So not going to be there. Probably Mike 1, and then we're going to join here and head south to the terminal through Echo, something like that. So we get ourselves off and to the right. Great. What else could we do? We could put in one of these fixes. I've talked about it a lot in previous videos. I never actually seem to do it on my streams. So Golf, Mike. It's done from the NSR. This is important actually. For these MSAs, you've got to base it off the right thing. So it's off the NSR NDB. NSR. Let's do that. 34 miles, so that's most likely the right one. And we can have radial 257 and 020. But I think because those are done in and we need to do them out, 257. So we're going to use 77. My maths struggles here. So radial is 77, which is the opposite of that one, and 020, which is obviously going to be 200. And now we just get a bit of an idea. So in this sector here, we know our MSA is going to be 3,800 feet. Just something you might consider doing. Right. Looking good. Back on profile. We've got our MSAs, got our arrivals. Quanadillo, Hani, thank you very much for coming along today, if I haven't said hi already. James, thank you very much. Very kind. Ariel F says, when you take off, I understand you should aim for 3 degrees a second speed. Is there any way to assess this from the instruments? Yeah, so if you're typically taking off to 15 degrees pitch, so 3 degrees a second. Descent altitude 4,000 feet, QNH 1016, jet set 218. Excellent. It's all coming together. 4,000 feet onto the QNH 1016. It's flashing because we're above the transition. It shouldn't really do that because we're already descending. It's because of that. So, no, I don't know why it's... Yeah, it stopped. Good. It shouldn't really flash because we're descending to below that 6-0 transition. Great, so there we go. Yeah, so 3 degrees a second. So if you're aiming around 15 degrees pitch on takeoff, then it's going to be about 5 seconds. And it's just a bit of practice, really. Just try your takeoffs. It should be a continuous 3 degrees a second. So about over 5 seconds, keeping it smooth and continuous, and then you should end up at about 15 degrees. That's the best guess, really. On these current engine aircraft, usually around 10 degrees of pitch. And obviously you should be looking outside, so it's a bit tricky to judge. But around 10 degrees of pitch, you sometimes have to pull a bit more to keep the rotation rate the same. And that's true in the real aeroplane. As the tailplane gets near the ground, it has a bit of an effect and you have to pull a bit more. On Neo aircraft, they've modified the way it rotates and it actually rotates just on a commanded rotation rate based on your side stick. In that case, you specifically need to not do that. Otherwise, as you go through 10 degrees, if you accidentally pull back a bit more, you're just going to increase the rate and it could be too fast. So that's why a full Neo mod would be, a full Neo update would be really good to see. Okay, going to 4,000, passing 10,000 feet. Let's get those LS buttons on. Passengers can be sat down. After Kotog heading 260, jet set 218. Okay, code tag, and then he wants heading 260, so it's going to be a base leg, so pretty much what we expected. What I'm going to do is, well, let's see how we're doing on the profile. 10, 34 miles, so we're about 9,000 feet above the ground, 918.27 plus a bit to slow down. That's not bad really with the speed back. I think we're in a pretty good place. Granadillo Hani has got the PA31 and is testing it. So yeah, good, excellent, enjoy. Fly Guy 1, do you use Streamlabs or OBS? I use Streamlabs OBS. I used to use OBS, I still use it for recording videos, but I use Streamlabs, which is what gives us the access to this bot that can then tell you livery links and Discord links and so on as we go. Brett Maxwell, good night. Thanks very much for joining us. Hope you have a good evening. See you next time. Thanks for coming along. Ian Morris, if you noted your landing elevation was different to the charts, would you adjust via the overhead? Interesting question. So on the overhead, we've got this landing elevation, and we always check it set to auto when we start. If you start adjusting it, yeah, you could do, I suppose, if it was wrong. I mean, this is taken from a database, so there really is no reason it should be. I see it's a little bit out by about 100 feet, but I must admit, I've not really come across that as an issue. I don't know if anyone else has. Maybe, I know there was some discussion on one of the ToLiss forums about it recently, but yeah, interesting. I suppose if it just wasn't working, then yeah, you may have to. Hopefully it would still have the automatic pressurization system working. Ryan Videos 94 says it's lovely weather in South Cheshire, thunder and lightning with hailstone. Excellent. Ryan Videos, yeah, I have, by real weather, I mean, I just have, oh, here we go, we've got to take our heading now. So to stop it leveling the wings, I'm just going to set it first and then pull, and we'll see it's reverted to VS. So let's keep it descending. I don't know why it's accelerated so much. We don't need to do that. Let's pull that speed. Now, if I set it to 230 knots at 1900 feet per minute, I can be, approach check is done. I can be pretty happy that the aeroplane will not get below that. So it's going to stay at idle now. So that's one way to help with your idle descents, but you're not really flying a targeted speed, so it's not very speed reliable. But let's get ourselves down so we're ready for this approach. Let's activate the approach phase. How far away from the runway? 17 miles, 6 of 18. Oh yeah, we don't want to be any higher than this, so let's keep it coming down. Getting our radar vectors, so that's looking good. Right, now we're going to pull for thrust idle open descent, so we're speed protected. I'm going to manage the speed, so we start slowing down, and I'm going to use a bit of the speed brakes now to help us out. Right heading 290, cleared ILS 35 right, jet set 218. Okay, 290, we're cleared for the ILS, so that's going to create a sequencing problem. So first, I'm going to do a radial in on the CI 35 right point. Inbound course was 345. So as I struggle with the maths, we're going to do the reciprocal, so it's going to be 165. So let's do that now. Radial in, and hopefully now that's sequenced. Yes, there's our point, so we're going to fly via that point, so that's fine. We're clear for the ILS. Let's get those speed brakes in before I forget them like normal. DME is not showing up. It's got a habit of this, and it actually messed up a video I was trying to film the other day. Glide slope and localizer are armed. We've got Cat 3 dual with both autopilots. Let's go to flaps 1, stop the engine spooling up too much. Didn't need to get down that fast, as the MSA is 3,600 feet here anyway. And we've got low auto brake. Excellent. Something as well, because we're coming in with this slightly lower descent angle, it means we'll probably need a little bit less of a flare because we'll have more power on the engines. But we'll see after our last landing in Gibraltar how that works out. So procedurally we could descend to 3.6, but as I'm being radar vectored, I can't really do it until the controller lets us. So I may have to ask for further descent here. Let's see. Now it is an ILS DME. This is a problem in the ToLiss, it seems, or the X-plane at the moment. It's a bit frustrating. There's localizer star, so that's going to work out just fine. We've already got going altitude of 4,000 feet in. Let's go to Well, how far are we from touchdown? 12 miles. Yeah, 4,000 feet, 12 miles. About right. With this shallower descent profile. Also, with a shallower descent, because our descent rates are lower, we've got a bit more room to configure. And we've gone right through that localized. Interesting. There's the glide slope, with the go around altitude already set. Starting to see the airport. Make sure you line up with the right runway. Jet set 218 established, 35 right. Tower 18.5, jet set 218, thank you, goodbye. Right, let's go to flap 2 before I forget that. Flaps to 2. And 18.5. And there we go, Airbus using its trimmers all on its own. Excellent. Always good to see in motion. Tower jet set 218, ILS 35 right.
Jet set 218, runway 25 clear to land, wind 250 degrees 14 knots.
Clear to land 35 right, jet set 218, thank you. Great, so we're already clear to land, 180 knots. How far out are we? 8 miles, yeah, time to configure. We're just not slowing down. So there's gear down. Get the last of the lights on. And flaps to 3. So the flight plan is sequenced. We've got the fuel, flaps to full, the camera crew over landing. DG27, no, I haven't yet got a speed brake in the office. It's definitely something I need to get sorted. Absolutely. As I've said in previous videos, I forget the speed brakes often, and something in the real airplane you'll do is you'll keep your hand on the speed brake lever when you're using it to stop you forgetting it. And I say that, let me have another check now to check I haven't forgotten it. No, there we go, good. Okay, so we're all ready to be stable. Excellent. Mateo saying Active Sky has a discount. Interesting, yeah, because that's been recommended a few times. Ricardo, without the PAPI, when I disconnect the autopilot on a VNAV approach, I normally depend on the PAPI to stay on the glide slope. Yeah, so that's, it's a good feature for that. The idea should be that if you keep that rate of descent, as long as it was a sort of 3-degree approach, that you can carry on from there visually by just keeping those datums. So now I can see this is a 3-degree descent. Sorry, this is a 2.5-degree descent. So even at 140 knots, and my ground speed is 137 with the headwind. So yeah, about 140. I'm only needing 700 feet per minute. Normally this is often 8 or 900s. So if I keep that after I disconnect, that should roughly keep me on the profile. So that can be useful. Also, this little donut, this green dot here can be useful, giving some backup guidance as to where you should be. But I do agree, PAPIs are a nice thing to have, and certainly if they're available, they give you a good backup. So we're stable at 1,000 feet. We're definitely visual with the runway, and he's already cleared us to land very kindly. Don Jones says apparently they've fixed the DME problem, or they are aware and will fix it. That's great. That'll really make a good difference because it's stopped me being able to make a video. I was going to do a localizer only video, but haven't been able to do that one just yet. Right, let's see what happens here. So the wind is a headwind from the right, a light headwind. Remember, we're coming in a little bit shallower. As we can see, 2.5 degrees. Pretty normal pitch, really, but slightly more than the ToLiss seems to normally do. I think I'll close that today. Right, autopilot coming off then. I'm not sure what I missed there. And that is what happens in real life. You'll be busy flying and even taking off, and you'll hear loads of chatter on the radio from other aircraft and so on. So you have to sort of start being able to block it out in your own minds while still listening for your call sign, obviously. Getting a little bit high. The wind has come into a headwind. Final approach to land, jet set 218.
Radio check.
Oh, I'm not sure what I've missed.
535 radio check. Radio 55,
Floating along.
Mark 55 taxi to holding point 25 right by Romeo Tango 01.
Versus, get the nose down.
Romeo Tango 01, Mark 55.
Got the low water brake. Have I turned off my microphone or something? Why couldn't he hear me? Okay, and we've got reverse green, decel. Where's that? Is that where we wanted to come off? Let's see if we can make this exit. Below 70 knots, reverses to idle. Forward idle, taxi speed. And I think we'll come off here. Get it nice and slow. And welcome to Casablanca. Fantastic. Not sure what that noise is. Jet set 218 vacating the runway at Papa 1.
Jet set 218, welcome to Casablanca. Taxi straight ahead via Papa, stand Echo 3.
Taxi straight ahead via Papa to stand Echo 3. Jet set 218, thank you. Right. Usual for me now is a mad rush to try and work out where my stand is. Echo 3, it's on the right. Okay. Straight ahead via Papa. So that's Papa straight ahead, it says there. So I think, let's bring it to a stop and check I've actually got the right idea here. That doesn't seem to make it very clear. I've come off much earlier than I thought. I was thinking we'd be up here at Mach 1. Yeah, interesting. So Papa, Mach 1, we're down here. Papa. Then we're going to make a left turn to Echo 3. Great. Right, let's get moving. Because there is somebody else out there flying around. Temperature outside, what is it? 26. So in that case, flaps can just go straight to 0. No problem there. Get the APU on the way and get rid of these lights we don't want. Get that radar off, predictive wind shear off. Predictive wind shear runs automatically if there's one engine running. So we do have to turn it off ourselves, even on the ground. Don't need the LS anymore. Get ourselves moving. Brakes are already showing us hot, so as we turn on to stand, I'm going to set those to on just before we get to the stand, really. Tango Delta, thank you very much. Yeah, that went a bit better than our Gibraltar attempt. And Swappy. Selfie and Joy, thanks very much, Richard, Glenn. Yeah, well, we'll see if we manage another one of those into Marrakesh. Yeah, anyone who saw the Gibraltar video, we had a bit of fun getting in there. Okay, so left turn up here. Looking for Echo 3 up near the top. So I'm expecting to go past most of the terminal and then get away. Once we're in this straight line, I'm going to just shut down one of the engines so we can do our little single engine bit. I think I have done that once before in a stream. Speed below 10 knots for this sort of 90-degree turn. Oh, it could be hard to judge Echo 3. Let's see if we manage. Sure, we can get close enough. Okay, you need that APU to be running on these older airplanes. The newer airplanes you don't. Let's have a quick look. There we go. Passengers will be all excited now. It's a great feeling, isn't it? Watching the sun beating onto the wing, knowing how hot it is outside when you arrive somewhere like this. Fantastic. Right, what are we going to do, guys? How are we going to judge this stand? How are we going to judge this stand? Isa Wafi, thank you very much for subscribing. Very kind. I hope you enjoy the video and any of the other ones. Tango Delta, can you set a keyboard shortcut to ToLiss tablet in the explain keyboard commands? You mean the ISCS? I'm not sure. That is a good question. Now this is interesting. This might be a bit easier as we get these are more normal looking stands. I don't think they're drive on, drive off stands, are they? Maybe they are. Maybe we have to go on. Interesting. Okay. Let's keep going up here. Is the AP available? No, we don't need the bleed. Sorry, not that. So that is available. So let's get rid of engine number 2 because we always go on engine 1. And we'll turn on the yellow electric pump. And that way the hydraulic PTU doesn't have to run the whole time. Now, I may have made my life difficult there because if we're going to have to turn left and left, that's going to be all against the live engine. So that probably actually isn't something you do in this situation. So I've now got a challenge on my hands. So guys, thanks for joining us for this flight. Here we are in Casablanca. I'm going to disconnect from VATSIM shortly and do a little bit of a replay just to see that landing, and then after that we're going to head on for our next sector, just a short hop further south to Marrakesh, and we'll have a bit of a view of what happens on the turnaround. Right, where is Echo? So it's just before there, Echo 3. I think it could be this one here. Let's take it, Echo 3, Echo 2, that must be Echo 1. Yeah, let's do that. So I think we'll go here. Right. And you can see just that engine sitting there idling.
535 ready check.
So, trick here will be not to get too slow. Get rid of the lights, don't want to blind all the ground crew. Let's get those brake fans on. Keep it moving, because I don't want to have to spool up that engine or stop on a turn.
535,
Let's see if we can get this right. Where are we? So you normally have a master of some kind. See if we can get that round. As I said, amazing turning circles on these machines. It's quite impressive. Oh, keep spooling, don't want to stop. And hopefully that's, oh, main wheel's a little bit off. Let's do that, and that. That'll do. So parking brake is definitely on. You can check it down there. The APU's running, so let's get rid of that engine. Let the passengers walk around. The engine's pulled down. A bit early for the beacon. Get rid of that yellow electric pump. There we go. Right, here we are. Welcome to Casablanca. And let's just disconnect from VATSIM. Let's just go very briefly. Hopefully this doesn't cause any big crashes. If it does, that's all right. We'll reload in no time. Get ourselves back out. So yeah, an interesting final approach to have a slightly shallower descent angle. We'll whiz further down. And let's have a quick look in the chats. Richard B says they might integrate ISCS into the tablet, so that would be great if it could be in the Avi tab. Yeah, I'd really like that. So hopefully they can add that feature for us. Isa and second part perfect. Okay, Isa. Wafik, thank you very much for that. There's so many good names on here that I have to have to get them right. So thank you for letting me know. Yeah, corrosive Marrakesh. That's where we're heading to next. DG, what's going on in Aberdeen? Right, let's have a quick look. Let me get you a better view for the landing. View external. And this is the classic. We'll go to runway, and I finally figured out how to make it faster. Then we go left. Zoom in a bit. I think it was a bit of a floater, so this may go past us a little bit. And there's our second route. Yep, Streamlabs is giving out the second route if you need it. Richard B, yeah, absolutely cup of tea. And I'm going to take a very short break in a moment, just while we're setting up for the next flight. And there we go. Fantastic. Love it. Let's have a passenger view. Who doesn't enjoy that? Let's go. Which one do you guys prefer? Engine? Let's go for engine today. And down we come. The ToLiss always plays that sound effect, which always sounds like a bit of a thud. But yeah, it's good fun. Excellent. Right, guys, thank you very much for joining. And I'm going to put it onto, hopefully, a different screen with a little bit of background music just while we go and take a very short break, just a couple of minutes, and then we'll be back setting up for our next flight. Saturn 28, thanks for joining. Good to see you here. Thanks for coming along. Ah, too cool. Good to know. Issa's another member. I knew I recognised that name from somewhere. Right, guys, let's put it back on the stand. We've shut everything down. Now we are living in this new age of having equipment. Let's just get it all to drive up. Oh, Does it just appear? There it is. Fantastic. There we go. Now it all appears. So that can do that. And I will see you guys very shortly. So thank you very much, and we'll just take a couple of minutes break. Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for hanging around. I'm glad you enjoyed the music, and I'm glad that worked. I wasn't sure it would. TT Spectre, yes. Ambulance and fire engine seem to have appeared as well, so we can start to let's get some of these things out of the way. So we could possibly stay on the APU, or you'd add low pressure air. On a remote stand like this in hot weather, quite likely that you'd have to use the APU to get cool air in. So open, let them load up the cargo. There we go. Yeah, it wouldn't be unimaginable that you'd have to use that, because it's unlikely to be an air facility out here, although some places certainly could. And we can get rid of some of these little cars. I don't think we need the limo anymore. And away they go. Right. Oh, weather seems to have gone a bit darker. So, guys, welcome back. We're going to head now for our next sector to Marrakesh. This time we're going to be the JetSet 219. So this is how we're going to find the aircraft after a flight like that. I can hear all the trucks outside. We're on the APU. I'm going to turn on that bleed to get some cool air into the cabin. So what would we typically do here? Well, somebody's going to go out and do the walk around and so on after the checks. Brake fans are still on. Temperatures are coming down, so that's fine. There's a few things you do check. So we're going to check that the IR position hasn't gone too far wrong. So if I go data position monitor, and this is, yeah, not uncommon. They're slightly drifted from each other, but that's fine. That's all well within limits. No problem, just a point of a mile there. So yeah, that's fine. Again, there is a chart that we can use if we think they're getting too far out of line and then they might need replacing. So that would have been done pretty much on parking up. We'd have let go of the passengers. And then we obviously should have planned our next flight. So we can go to charts. Let me just get that frame rate a bit higher for us. Charts, time to swap that over now. Done with that one. And now we're doing GMMN to GMMX. So we need 6.7 tons of fuel for this flight. And our weights are no longer as much of an issue. We're actually going to be really heavy. Lots of people want to do this. So we're going to be landing at 76 tons. So yeah, I thought that'd be quite interesting, because after all, Marrakesh, if we have a look at the charts for it, don't need the approach anymore, don't need the arrival anymore, is going to have, I'm hoping, GMMX, a longer runway. So it'd be quite fun to have a go at the arrival there and a landing at a slightly heavier weight, as we've done lighter weights for the last couple. Unless I'm mistaken with the runway length, 3,100 meters. No, there we go. So that'll be absolutely fine. So let's get started with our setup. And this is where we use our float. So this is all still good. And it's A. Time to get ourselves loaded up. GMMN, GMMX. Absolutely fine. Alternate. We're going to come back here. It's such a short flight that that's going to be our alternate, really, just a return. And let's have our flight number 219, although I think I've printed it wrong in there. Ah, that's annoying. Oh well, FCA, first choice, as it once was, 219. Just rounding up those flight numbers. Cost an X of 60, which seems very high for this flight, but we'll start off with that and see what we want to do. Cruising at 310, so a bit more of a climb for this one. Flight time of 51 minutes, I mean, pretty similar. Let's load up the wind. And that's our init A. Flight plan. Expecting to depart from 35 right. Sounds like we have ATC today, though. So what I might do is I'm going to grab the clearance from air traffic, and then we'll have a better idea what we're actually doing before I embarrass myself too much. Because I consistently have the wrong departure. What I might do is get rid of a few extra things. And we can load up the fuel. Let's do that now. So 6.7. Landing perf. We need to top up. So 6.7. And let's do the same again. Let's go for 7 tons, another 300 kilos. And let's get the weight right. Zero fuel weight now, 71.1 roughly. So that's a really heavy plane. Roughly there. And apply. Good. So if we go outside, that's going to be the end of our need. Ah, good, we can make that smaller. Hey, that's better. Okay, so our passengers are now on. We've loaded that. And fuel is on. Catering's on.
Royal Morocco 48, pushback approved.
There's a Royal Maroc over there, getting their clearance, although sadly they're playing as an Air Canada livery in here. And let's copy our clearance. Casablanca, good evening. Jetset 219, Airbus A321, stand Echo 3, QNH 1016, request departure clearance for Marrakesh.
Jetset 219, Casablanca Tower with you. Radio check, please.
Reju 5, Jetset 219.
Jetset 219, thank you. Clear to your destination via LACAM 1 Delta departure. Initial level 50, squawk 4206, 4206.
Jetset 219, cleared to Marrakesh, LACAM 1 Delta departure, climb flight level 50, squawk 4206.
Jetset 219, red box for the correct airport, ready for taxi.
Wilco Jetset 219. Excellent, so 4206 is our squawk, flight level 50, and he told us LACAM 1 Delta, which I think was pretty much what I was expecting. If we have a look on our charts, how does that work? I think it takes us north before going south. Yeah, that's why this flight has that ability to go a bit higher. So we'll do that, departure. I'm not sure why. That seems to just be the way the Simbrief set it up. I thought it was necessitated by something else, but maybe it's not. But we can possibly get a better route once we're in the air. After all, this is now what we filed, so we're a bit stuck with it. Uniform Romeo 722 after LACAM. Bye, Ian Morris. Thanks very much for joining us. Have a good evening. And yeah, hope to see you again soon. Thanks for coming along. Dougal McTavish, is Wilco acceptable on ATC these days? Yes, absolutely. I know lots of people use it all the time. And I'll talk about that very shortly. I know it does sometimes sound a bit old-fashioned, but it is quite useful, Map App. So that's it, our short flight. Maybe that's because that's just the way to get us onto that airway. And then expecting to arrive onto 28 in here. Oh, it could be an RNAV. So we'll set that up once we're on the way, heading north in the wrong way. So that's fine. So that's our flight plan. Secondary copy. Radio navs. Let's bring up that chart. So GMMN. Departure. LACAM 1 Delta. Now, the more you fly to airports, the more used to things you get, and you have to be careful not to get complacent, because sometimes random things change, and you might just assume you knew what was going on, and then it's not until you're actually airborne and the airplane turns left early or something, then you realise you should have probably looked it up. So 230 knots at Mokda, that could be an issue for us today, and then we make our right turn to LACAM. So that's all in there and absolutely fine, but we'll soon find out if that works. So secondary is a copy. RadNav is going to be auto-tuned because this is... if I just check, is there anything we could use? I guess it's initially based off the, let's see if I can pronounce the Noah Sur, November Uniform Alpha 255. So we could put that in there, which is already in there, but I can just tune it, November Uniform Alpha. And then it stays there, and the Airbus won't swap it to something else if it feels it's more important. And then I have to select it on here so I can actually see it. Okay, so there's our Radio Nav Aid page. Time now, so that's diff sur init b. If anyone's wondering why I'm doing that, it is there is my FMGC video talks about what I'm talking about there, and the way to remember what to set up in the MCDU. Okay, 71 tons now. So 048 71, 048 CG 27. Block 7 tons gives us a takeoff weight 77.8, so that's fine. Now this would be a classic flap 1 takeoff, long runway. And we want to have good performance in the air. If we took off flap 3, we would have, with the heavy air and not too much headwind, it would be worse climb performance than a flap 1 takeoff. 35 right, no shift, flaps 2, 1. Flexible temperature of 39. So funnily, we're having to use more thrust than we did out of Gibraltar. Speed V1, 160. VR, 160. So while this is going on, you know, you'd have loads going on in the back, passengers getting off, passengers getting on, the cabin being cleaned. You'd have some sort of dispatcher, they're called, the person who, or turnaround manager, and all sorts of different names, that they sort out all these extra things outside. So as we mentioned earlier, the pilots won't generally coordinate all of this. There may be some things we have to get involved in, but yeah. so there's lots of people coming on and off the airplane. And with the steps, it can be hard to get off the airplane to do your walk around, and then you've got to come back up the steps with all the passengers, which can slow you down a bit. So here we go. No shift, flaps 1, flex is 39, speeds are in. For our takeoff standard, we'll just use standard thrust and acceleration. I didn't see any noise, although I must admit I should have probably looked a bit more carefully. Of interest to us is this 230 knots speed limit. Look at that, our clean speed is 229, so we can actually just accelerate and clean up as normal. Looks like we've got to get above 2,000 feet though initially, which is there, 2,000 feet overfly point, that little triangle is like an overfly. So we've got to meet that criteria of 2,000 feet, and then we can intercept 304 to Mach there. Okay, so we're not using the GPU. Let's close up these doors. It's a shame in auto they don't recognize the ground handling, but there we go. And close. Okay, so that's all the way up to performance done in the MCDU. Crescent Moon says it's used when asked to do something like after intersection contact 1228. Usually say Wilco. I notice there's different ways of using it. The main reason is going to be if it's not a clearance. So a clearance that you don't need to read back. So if you're cleared for an ILS, you've got to read it back. There's loads of instructions in different countries who all have their own instructions on radio telephony or talking on the radio. But Wilco you'd use if it doesn't need to be read back, but it's something you've been asked to do. So if you've been asked to say, like earlier, we were told to report when on the ILS, report when established. That could be a Wilco because it's not I don't need to read back the clearance. I'm already cleared to establish on the ILS. They're just asking me to do something. So I'll say Wilco, I will comply. It stands for will comply. I will comply with what you've asked me to do. So I will read it back to you later. So that's when it's used typically. You can't use it to replace things like clearances to land or instructions like crossing a runway or even frequencies need to be read back. You have to say the actual frequency. But for other little instructions, it can just be used just to say, yeah, I've understood and I will do that. There we go. Right. What have we got going on in front of us? Yeah, all the ground crew getting ready to go. So let's get rid of the last little bits. Drive away all. Oh, let's just hide it all. Otherwise we'll have problems later on. Oh, it's got nice and quiet in the flight deck. So the APU's on. We've got that available. And now really, we're just sort of running through where we were earlier. So stop the clock, reset that. Set that to arc. We've got a clearance. We've done that. So we're almost actually getting to the point where we could consider starting up. Let's just check our taxi route on the way out. Echo 3, probably heading south all the way down. And I hopefully have an airport chart somewhere. Yeah, all the way down. Wow, long on taxi to 35 right. So we might consider doing single engine. Although I don't know the airports, so to make sure I don't get that wrong, I think we'll do both. But we're essentially going straight ahead. Fantastic. Richard V having a good old British builder's T. Strong enough. Yeah, absolutely. So that would just be a nice strong T for those of you not familiar with it. Excellent. DG27, absolutely. The hotter the thrust, the hotter the temperature, the more thrust needed. It's just funny when it's such a long runway. I was a little bit surprised, but absolutely no reason why not. Good, so we're here, ready to go in our trusty old Oscar Alpha Echo. Let's bring up the before starts. Right, don't need better pushback. We're going to taxi straight ahead. We've done the brief, ATC, and here we go. Let's get ready to go. So, thrust levers, that's definitely closed. We've got the AP with that on. Passenger seats, seatbelt signs can go on. That window's closed. And you wouldn't set that. Oh, that should have been off. That was bad. I've had that going on transponder for too long. But we'll do the beacon when we get clearance. So let's ask for startup. Jet set 219, request start stand Echo 3.
Jet set 219, startup approved, report ready when taxi.
Startup approved, Wilco, jet set 219. Okay, so set that there, get that beacon on. Transponder code, beacon, done ATC, and we aren't going to push back. We're just going to start the engines. So you probably would still have some member of the ground crew talking to you here, so you could still check with them it's clear to start engines, just as a final check that nothing's sitting behind the airplane, none of the doors are open. I know we can see them here, but there could be a truck sitting right next to you. It does occasionally happen where they get left around or baggage containers. Let's start up the engines. Off we go again. Starting 2. Off we go. And these are short flights. I mean, you could do 4 sectors with each of them being a 2-hour block time in a day, no problem. I sometimes think it would be quite fun to do that in simulator just to show how a day might actually look. But it would be a lot of flying and a lot of time.
Our Mark 48 heavy runway T5 left departure confirmed 360 degrees 13 knots when airborne monitoring recommend to dismal 8 minutes 7 up. Clear to take off runway T5 right, use command to dismal 8 minutes 7 up.
Excellent. So there's our engine up and running and available. Let's go for engine 1. So you can see, I mean, turnarounds, they are entirely possible. As Flight 24 said, can be a bit of chaos with all those trucks and vehicles around and trying to get yourself out to do the walk around. And the magic here is our passengers, we just move a slider. But of course, in real life, it takes time to get people on and off an aeroplane. And also, you've got to look after people who may need extra help, and you need to deal with plenty of issues that might arrive. So are the numbers matching up with the numbers you expect, and so on? Are people late to the gate? Sometimes it could be that there's a problem in the terminal and it's causing delays and things like that. So going nice and smoothly like this is it's not too bad getting the times right, but there can be plenty of things that go on that needs a lot of work to keep it going smoothly. And there's our second engine up and running. Fantastic. That's available. Back to norm. Don't need the APU. And let's carry on with our flow. Fuel prediction is going to be 27.8. Over we go. Exactly where it was before. This resets to 0 on landing. A few seconds after landing, the trimmer will just run to 0. So you always have to reset that. Whatever happens, really. Get that timer running. Speed brakes. Flaps to 1 this time. That's already set to transponder. Timer, well, that should really go from probably when we release brakes, although it could be up to your airline, really, I suppose. And we got our flight level. Okay, don't have any wave off, although you would still see a wave. You need to make sure the ground crew have left, so we can say that they definitely have today. Let's get ourselves underway. Jet set 219, request taxi.
Jet 219, taxi to our left point runway T5 right via Papa Tango Sierra 1, QNH 1016.
QNH 1016, taxi holding point 35 right via Papa Tango Sierra 1. Jet set 219. Right, okay, let's see, can I work this out? Papa is there, Tango 3, Tango 2, and that will hopefully become Sierra 1. Yep, so we've got ourselves down to the right and then first right. Let's have a look around and check it's all clear. All looking good. Nice and empty airport. So brakes released, off we go again. Right, let's get ourselves moving. Don't want to blast a stand. We'll run a brake check. There it is. All looking good. How are those brake temperatures? Down at 150. So that's interesting. 150 is actually the limit with the brake fans on. So now we can just about take off with those brake temperatures. If it was any higher, we couldn't. But without the brake fans, it's the 300 degree limit because the fans cool with the sensors in the wheels. So it's a bit of a balancing act. If your wheels were at, say, 250 degrees and you weren't expecting them to rise anymore in terms of temperature, then if you turn on the brake fans, you've now got a new limit of 150, so you'd have to wait for them to cool down. So it's something to be careful with. Let's make sure we don't miss Papa. I think it's not here. And the brake temperatures rise. There's a delay. So as you run the brakes, it'll increase in temperature over time, so over a few minutes from when you've done it, which is why you'll land and you won't get the brakes hot in the real airplane for a couple of minutes. Usually you'll be parking on stand, and that's about when you get your real idea of how hot the brakes are. The ToLiss does it a bit quicker. It seems to show you the temperatures seem to rise almost immediately. And with the brake fans on, I'm surprised they're still sitting at 150 degrees, but not impossible. But we did land quite light. If you're in a light airplane, the brake temperatures are much less likely to be an issue. Okay, so we're heading all the way back down the way we came. Let's get the speed up a little bit so we don't hang around for too long. Now we're going to do our flight controls. Full left, full right, neutral, full down, full up, neutral. You may hear my the joystick I use sort of squeaking. It doesn't do a lot of squeaking at the moment. Right, let's do our rudder check. So disconnect button pressed and full right, full left, neutral. Looking now out the window. Hopefully we're going to see, is that Papa Tango 3? There we go. And that's what we were told to do using Papa. So we're going to take the right there. Not here, that's that stand. And then we can do the rest of the flow as we head out there. Excellent. Love it. Not much scenery out here. We were a bit treated. Gibraltar seemed to have some quite good default scenery in X-Plane. But a bit less here in Casablanca. I'm sure somebody's made a good scenery for it somewhere in the world. Right, then we're going to take a left here, Tango 3. So first officer's done their flight controls at some point. Then we would also get that to TRA. Auto brake's going to go to max. Takeoff config. Ding the cabin. Oh, these lights. Missed the lights. That's terrible. Mostly useful for alerting people in the vicinity that you're about to move, especially any ground crew who hopefully have moved away by this point. Okay, left turn here. Don't want to accidentally wander over onto that runway. Oh, let's get that right. Got to oversteer a little bit in the 321, otherwise the main wheels will just get too close to the edges. Look at this, nice long taxiway. So the problem in the real airplane in a day like this would be heating up the brakes. So we're on both engines, and if we're going to drive for a couple of kilometers in a straight line, as you guys know, the airplane can have a habit of accelerating even without thrust. So you have to constantly ride the brakes, constantly use the brakes, and then they could heat up significantly before takeoff. Doesn't seem as bad in the CFM engines though. The CFM seems to not move as fast, whereas the IAE engines, when you release the brakes, the plane will just move in almost all situations on two engines. Engines are warm. Let's go to open checklist. There we go, that's easier. We've done that. We go packs on, take off. And we got the rest of the flow to do there. No problem. Good stuff. Right. Glenn Chambers, do you only fly the 321 or do you also fly the 319? No, I've only got the 321 here. So that's all we ever see in the channel at the moment. But I would like to do a comparison of the 319 and the 21, just to show some of the differences. Because there are probably more than people realise. Just like with the Neo, that there are a few differences in there, even though the flight decks look the same. It's amazing actually. We're not really. I'd expect us to be going sort of 30 plus knots just without any thrust on, but it's taking its time. Lizo5 says, what happens if you get a caution for the brake temp on takeoff? Yeah, so what you'd get is an ECAM, says brakes hot, and it would come up on here. And as a result of that, you'd have to, well, it depends on the airline and your decision making really, but the idea would be that we don't take off with that caution. It's actually, strangely, it's a caution mainly related, as my understanding, to having the hot brakes sitting into the wheel well. So you don't want to have big amounts of heat in there where you've got lots of pipes and wires and so on. So you don't want those wheels retracted into the belly of the aircraft and very hot. Ironically, carbon brakes on airliners, the warmer they are, the more they grab. So you don't notice it in the ToLiss when you're just using one button like I am here. But if you're flying the aircraft and you're using, we do all our braking using these toe brakes. So you just squeeze your toes on the top of these pedals and you're trying to keep it in line. So the same amount of pressure on both sides so that the airplane doesn't swerve left and right. But when they're hot, you can apply a little bit of pressure and you'll find the brakes instantly grab on. But when they're cold, it doesn't work like that. They take a while to become useful. So you really can feel the difference between cold and hot brakes. Okay, where's that? Romeo 1. So QRS. Let's expect Sierra 1 to be coming up next. I think we're pretty much ready to go. Anybody do please say if you see anything missing.
219 on Y25 clear for takeoff, wind 360 degrees 13 knots, wind airborne, monitoring command 278, have a nice flight, bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your help. Jetset 219 clear for takeoff, runway 35 right after airborne Unicom 1228. Goodbye. And there it is, Sierra 1. We don't want to miss that, otherwise, where does that? There's another one. Oh, I suppose it looks like another lineup point. So we're going to go and line up, get the strobes on, all the rest of the lights on. Excellent. Get that speed under control. Sierra 1. Off we go. Looking forward to it. We're going to head north and then we're going to head south, get a bit of a view over North Africa and fly to somewhere different. And that'll be the end of our flight when we get to Marrakesh today. But then we'll be looking to go elsewhere in the next one, possibly in the Neo. And I say in the Neo, as we know, in the visual representation of a Neo. But it does look very nice. They've done a great job, the design on the engine. Here we go. All lights on, nice flap 1, long runway takeoff.
Approaching 35 right.
RAS doing its work. Right, let's go for a rolling one this time. Keep it moving. Now that's a bit fast. Still, everybody should be sat down now.
35 right.
Start the chrono, and the magic of these CFMs. 50% N1, half side stick forwards. Get that center line running in between the screens, and then we know we're on it. 50%. 2 clicks forward. Man, flex 39, SRS. Runway order thrusters aren't. So there is an ILS here, so that gives us that runway guidance. Not really used much, to be honest with you. It's always there, but it's yeah, rarely used on takeoff because you're looking outside. 80 to 100, releasing the nose with wheel pressure. Rotates. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Too slow. Right, positive climb. Gear up. Yeah, so you can see there, took me more than 5 seconds to get to 15 degrees, so that was probably a bit slow, a bit of a hang around the 10 degree mark on that rotate. I must remember to go to Unicom. Let's have another flyby as we leave our next, on our way to our next destination. Fantastic. And I've missed all of that, obviously, as I'm messing around in simulator. So levers, thrust climb, fly, auto thrusts. And this is where you need to look through the flight directors a bit. They're doing a bit of more wobbling than they probably need to. After all, we're only going roughly straight ahead. We can see we want to go to this newer point. We're through our 2,000 feet point though, so that's good. Autopilot 1. Oh, getting a message, interestingly. Let's deal with that when we're on the way. So everything's looking okay so far. Now that's what I've forgotten. Those brake fans, they should be off for takeoff. They're on a micro switch, but they should be off for takeoff because as you're heading down the runway, if the fans are on and there's sort of dust being thrown up by the engines and the nose wheel and so on, it's not good for the brake fans. It could start putting dust onto them or debris. So yeah, they should be turned off on takeoff. Right. Flaps to 0. We've had our auto retraction there, so I haven't done anything yet, but there they go, through to 0. 230 knots, which is our speed limit, which is what the airplane's automatically doing. Packs are still on. Those lights can go off, and speed brakes disarmed. Right, so we should monitor 1228. We're going to level off. There we go. I can hear the engines doing it. Should be watching that. An early level off. And it was to flight level 50, so important we get that in. Standards, flight level 50. Yeah, that would be embarrassing. Right, let's see what I've missed. I'm not sure. I seem to have a message from the tower. People wanted me. I thought I read it back, but apparently I didn't. Okay, so 230 knots here. We're monitoring 1228. So my understanding, guys, is that now we can head up. So let's go up to 310. Just climb, open climb, there's 310. Done the thrust, done the flaps, speed brakes, packs, lights, contact ATC. That's done. On to standard. Next is at 10,000 feet. And here we go. What we're going to do is I think we'll get our height up, make the right turn at Mach 10, and then we may just choose to come back through the overhead. There we go, that's a bit nicer. A bit of a view out the window for once. It's been a bit grey for the first flight. Swappy, thanks for coming along so far. Yeah, absolutely. Have a good evening. Enjoy your night. Thanks for coming along. RLF, no, I haven't personally heard that expression. It may be true. I haven't heard it. Matt Haynes, glad you got the Active Sky sale. Let's have a look for that. Is that on sale on the normal X-Plane org? And Dougal talking about racing cars with carbon brakes, and they scare you. Yes, they are quite something. That must be quite fun to race them. But I'm imagining it's the same, where you'd need to warm them up first to get some proper braking out of them. Magnetic brakes, says DG27. Yes, that would be good. Richard V, I've heard V1 simulations use that term. There you go. So I personally haven't heard it, but that doesn't mean it's not it's not out there. It's quite a good one. I quite like it. Let's see if I've missed anything here. Coming up to our 10,000 feet. The plane will accelerate for us. We can get rid of the timer. The timer's there. We time at the start of the takeoff roll for the engine thrust. So we can't use takeoff thrust for more than 5 minutes on 2 engines. So through 100s, they can go. So here's interesting, our speed's back and we're at 10 degrees of pitch. So you might consider not releasing the seatbelt signs until we have lowered the nose a bit, because it could be hard with trolleys and things in the cabin. Although you don't feel the turning force because it's going to be about 1G, you will feel that pitch, especially with heavy drinks trolleys and so on being moved up and down the cabin. So sometimes you might consider not doing that. Okay, we're heading north out the way. I don't know, how long is that speed limit? Let's see if it keeps that speed limit. Soon we'll get turning the other way. I seem to have upset. Oh, no, that's what happens with this joystick I use. I accidentally lean on the thrust levers. The real Airbus ones are quite heavy, so that's less likely. Okay, tower doesn't seem too upset with me. I'm not sure what I did wrong there, but that's fine. Okay. Right. Lowered nose. Now we're at 5 degrees pitch. That's much better. Seatbelt signs can go off. That's all set. Ooh. Today we will have something to clear out of the radnav. We're going to clear out that NDB. Don't need that anymore. Secondary we'll just copy over. And let's have airports. Good, good. All done. Optimum today, we're nice and heavy. So Optimum's 332, we're going to 310, perfect. Maximum 365, so we could even go up to 33, but I don't think we will, as we've fired what we fired. 340 knots is very fast for the climb, especially at this weight. I'd be surprised if you ever had this. Matt Haynes, thanks very much. Just Flight site, there you go, Just Flight, I've got the Active Sky, interesting, thank you. Is my overlay working? It looks like it is, excellent. I noticed there's no blue line yet, probably because we're pointing in the complete wrong direction and it doesn't actually know the route. Corrosive Moon says, in the cockpit during cruise, is it noticeably loud or a bit noisy? Airbus is pretty quiet. Generally, the bigger airplanes are quieter. So if you're thinking long-haul aircraft, 330, 380, I think the 777. Apparently the 757 is noisier than the 767. That's I got that off a blog, a pilot who flies Boeings in America. He said that. He said that the pointier nosed aircraft tend to be a bit noisier in his experience. So there you go. I think the 737 is a bit louder than the Airbus, and that one is actually quite noisy. So the Airbus, for a short-haul aircraft, is relatively quiet. But there's still a definite roar. You'll hear the wind roar. It's certainly not like you're sitting in a room or an office or anything like that. It is a constant roar. So noise-cancelling headsets are used very often, even on the Airbus, because it just eases that pressure on your ears. Otherwise, that constant noise for 12 hours in a day could be quite exhausting, and also might mean that you miss things or have to talk loudly. TT Spectre, have you got Costanex at 60? I think I do. Which is giving us this ridiculous 340 climb speed. I mean, it seems to be managing, but yeah, any sort of increase in the wind. We're going from a tailwind here, and then we're going to turn around into a headwind. So you'll see that could make that a bit tricky, because if you turn into a headwind now, we'd get an increase in speed and could get an overspeed. Let's start preparing our charts for Marrakesh. Right, GMMX. And then once we've done that, we can have an idea where we want to go direct to. I can't imagine we're going to find a air traffic control there, so I think we'll be able to go where we want. Let's see, what's the weather doing there? Variable at 6. Interesting. Variable at 6. So where do we want to land? That's the question. What do you guys fancy? I think there's an RNS to one end and an RNAV onto the other, so it makes sense to do the RNAV really. We can do an RNAV either way. Hopefully the DMEs are working here, because that is a little bit frustrating. Let's see, what approaches have we got? Let's bring up the parking stands for later. So we're coming in via Mabap, and I was planned by the Mabap 2 Alpha. Mabap 2 Alpha, so let's see which runway that was for. Mabap, DME Arc, excellent. To Odalo, coming in from the north, good. So that's going to put us in line for an easterly arrival. So I think I would then expect to do some sort of approach onto 10. So there's an RNS for 10 using a racetrack or an RNAV. So what does the RNAV look like? Let's have a look. Odalo and then in. Oh, I think that's certainly an option. Obviously Lambda seems like an easy one, but I've had people talk about DME arcs before, so we'll see if we can get the Airbus to do one of those. So let's code that in. Flight plan. And we'll see actually as we turn this corner, let's see how our speed goes. And maybe finally our progress bar will start showing some progress on the flight. Yeah, so from tailwind, knowing we're turning into a headwind, the airplane has a lot of energy through the air, especially at this speed and this weight. So it'll plow through the air and we'll get an increase in speed. It won't just immediately settle down. I'll have 10. It doesn't seem to link up. That's annoying. It's a 3 Alpha. Oh man, that's a little bit frustrating. What have I done wrong here? I have a 2 Alpha, but it must link to the ILS then. Let's try the map at 1 Alpha. What does that look like? Maybe we'll miss out the arc for the RNAV. Approach. No. Through those clouds. What's the temperature up here? Oh, 8 degrees. Yeah, we're going to need the anti-ice. Let's get that up and running. Easy to forget when you're flying around in these nice warm places. We may not see a speed increase as it's such a wide turn. It might actually be a gentle increase in the headwind, so it could be alright. Arrival, here we go. Okay, arrival. I seem to be completely... 1 Alpha, here we go. Right. That's still a DME arc via Odalo. Okay, that's what we're going to do then. Via Odalo. Then if we go to plan, zoom in, temporary flight plan. Looks like exactly what we're expecting. Insert, fantastic. Good, there we go. How's this turn going? Absolutely fine. And let's get ourselves heading to... Where's the first point? Let's go to Mabap. With that constant, that shouldn't take too long to get there. So Mabap nav. So although we're below TAT of 10 degrees, because of our high speed, you can see that the static air temperature, SAT, is actually really low. It's almost 30 degrees lower than the air on the wingtips or in front on the leading edge of the airplane, the TAT, total air temperature, 4 degrees. If the SAT is below -40 in the climb or cruise, then we don't have to put the anti-ice on because the static air is so cold that none of the moisture in it should be able to freeze onto the airplane. That's the theory. Although there are a few phenomena that could cause that to happen, which you'll find out about ice, high altitude crystal icing, things like that. But generally, below -40, you don't have to. However, in the descent, with your engines at idle thrust, or in any descent, because the engines aren't running at the same power, we have to turn on the anti-ice even if the temperature is below -40 SAT. So for now we need to use the engine anti-ice, but soon we won't need to once it gets to -40. Nice weather here though. This looks pretty good for X-Planes. Clouds are usually quite fluffy, but these look a little bit more defined. Pretty good. Let's see if did I get the radar? Let's get that radar. Definitely want that set to weather and turbulence. We'll have it on 0 degrees, pointing in front of us. Get rid of the terrain display. Starting to take a hit on the frame rate here with the over the clouds. So our descent point coming up already. Let's go and have a look at the airport. Make sure we have the weather right. So 31 degrees here. So this could be 32. It's getting warmer. This could be a time we need to put in the leave the slats out. So do remind me. I'll probably forget. Right. I'll set that wrong. There we go. QNH 1015. As you guys know, for non-persistent approaches, very important we get that set up correctly. Temperature 32. Wind is variable 4. So for variable 4, you can put in what you want. Really, I'm just putting 00 at 4. And then we would just look at the chart a little bit closer once we've leveled off, so that we're ready for that. But yeah, QNH is going to be really important. I have a video out, a tutorial for RNAVs if you need it. So do feel free to head over to my channel and you'll see that there. That guides through setting up and flying an RNAV or a non-precision approach. Alipay says, a 320 sim pilot, does that terrain map with a chunk of sea cut out normal feature on the 321? Interesting. Let's have a look. What was it doing? So what I think it's doing here is it's showing the coast, and then we've got black because there's no terrain issue there, and then the higher terrain is to the left, so showing up from 1600 feet to 3300 feet. So this edge here, I suppose that's probably not normal. You don't normally get these sharp straight lines. It should just show the terrain all the way out. And if we zoom out, what happens then? Was that what you're talking about? Yeah, so you'd expect that to continue out. It doesn't normally cut it off. It seems to have just this grid loaded here, but I don't think it's loaded any further along, and that could be the reason why. Maybe it's part of my fly with lure script here, helping me out with the frame rates. Yeah. Vulcan Beta 11 available, says Dougal. Well, I think I'm still back on 9, so I'll have to have a look. It could be that I've running behind, and maybe some of these things have been fixed already. But yeah, see if it's available on Steam. You are very welcome, Alipay. Absolutely, that's what we're here for. Yeah, those engines roaring away. It's nice to see there's quite a big difference in the ToLiss sound pack. This is the default sound between the IE. Here we go, SAT -40. We're in the clear anyway, but even if we're in the cloud now, I could turn those off, and then you get a bit more. In the real airplane, you'd see, actually, you'd physically see the N1s increase when you turn those off because they take power out of the engine to use the air to heat it up. 1228, we're definitely monitoring. Good. We got our 40-mile level segment before we have to head back down again. So 1,000 feet to go, and then we'll get ourselves ready. It should be quite interesting. Heavyweight RNAV approach into Marrakesh. What I'm thinking, guys, is guys and gals, is after Marrakesh we head west out and have a little tour of the Canary Islands, and maybe from there we'll go north via Funchal, back up to Portugal. I want to get over to Eastern Europe and see Croatia and the other side of the Mediterranean we haven't done so far. So there's just some ideas. So let me know what you guys would like to see. Mac out star. Here we are on the cruise. Let's set that down. Oh, we left it on below. Doesn't matter, as I said, because it's going to still give us TCAS warnings as and when. But in busy airspace, it's quite useful to see what's above you. Oh, excuse me. That's not good. Shaking the camera around like that. Let's do it a bit smoother. System check again. All looking pretty reasonable. Not sitting in the ice. Hydraulics are all good. Fuel burn, 2 tons is burnt, +5, that's 7 tons. Yeah, that makes sense. Cabin nice and cool. Wheels, yeah, down at 140. I mean, I'm surprised they're that hot really, but there we go. Great. Okay, let's get this ready for the approach. So, we're doing this RNAV onto runway 10. It's an RNAV GNSS. Doesn't say authorization required, which is good. Airport elevation, 1,500 feet. So we've got a high elevation here. So I'm starting to think about the performance. I'm going to go medium auto brake and we'll go maximum reverse to try and get some energy out of the brakes. Because it's, yeah, that's quite high and hot, 32 degrees. So we'll do a flat fall landing again. From Adalo, we're going to head to MX 102, maximum 220 knots. Let's bring this up full screen. Sorry about that, just for a second. Right, let's go. Avitab toggle. Okay. So we're going to head down 220 knots, 3,200 feet, but we have to beware that's not 3,200 feet above the runway. Yeah, not 3,200 above the runway. The airport is actually elevated by about 1,500 feet. There it is, 1,500. So that's pretty low, actually. I mean, what's that? That's about 2,000, slightly under 2,000 feet. So that's a really short final approach. Yeah, 5-mile final approach. So we need to be fully configured. I want to be fully configured by MX 104. And I'm going to do that to flat full just as we start down. And we're going to use final app for this approach. QNH is really important, but the big backup for that is going to be the radio altimeter. 2,500 feet on top of 1,500 feet, 3,500, 4,000. So at 4,000 feet QNH, I'm expecting for the radio altimeter to come alive. Terrain is mostly to the south, although we crossed some earlier on here. And we're coming in from Adalo. Maximum 13,000, minimum is 6,000. So in theory, 6,000 from Adalo, and then we have 9 miles to get down to MX 102 at 3,200. Yeah, that's possible. Okay, so 6,000 feet at Adalo, but then having to have the speed back and get our descent going. That should be possible. Let's have a look at how that looks in the coding. Done that. Let's close that. Close that for now. Just a quick check in the comments. Roger Moore, thanks for joining us. And yes, Steam is still on beta 9. That's what I've got at the moment as well. So that's good to know. I haven't missed anything yet. Oh, apparently Steam are running a bit later. Excellent. Tango Delta, yeah, Funchal Circle to land. I think that would be fun. So that's certainly on the cards. Richard V, perhaps a Greek island tour. Yeah, that would be great. We did Skiathos. I think it was the second stream. So it'd be good fun to go back and see some of the other places. We've got Corfu and Rhodes and Preveza and places out there. Dubrovnik and Tivat, says Alipay, yeah, brilliant. I'd love to go to Dubrovnik. It'd be good to have some scenery for there as well, actually. That might be something to consider. Great stuff. So that would be Eastern Europe, and we could see a bit of Slovenia and Ljubljana. These are some really pretty places to go and see. Okay. So we're coming up on our descent point. Let's go through our little hat. So the flight plan we will now actually, let's give it a really good check because the coding is so important for this. Mabap, Landbo, Adalo, MX 102, and as we see here, MX 102. Now, as I always say, the vertical profiling in the ToLiss is not complete yet, and it's a shame, but it should say the flight path angle we would need 3 degrees. So it's going to get us down to 3,200 feet at MX 104 and then descend from there. So by MX 104, I'm going to be at 3,200 and I'm going to arm the approach there. And in reality, we would then see -3 degrees written here. So we would know that's where the airplane is planning to start its descent. We can't go direct to MX 104, so we've got to go to MX 102 and then head there. But there's quite a big gap between the two, 8.4 miles. And is the go around coded correctly? get above 2,000 feet, straight ahead to 2,000, then a right turn at 185 knots, so we'll keep the flaps out. Back to MX 608, climbing to 4,500. At 608, right turn to Adalo, climbing to 6,000. Or as directed. Wow, 3 different altitudes. The 2,000 isn't a limit. It's a 2,000, then a right turn to MX 608. Or isn't it a limit? Interesting. That could be, yeah, it looks like an above. Above 2,000 is coded in there. I think that's sensible because as soon as you reach 2,000, you can make your turn. And as soon as you're turning right to MX 608, you can climb to 4.5. So I think 4.5 initially. And after 608, we go to Adalo to 6,000 to hold. So there we go. So we'll do 4.5 as our go around altitudes. Can be quite hard to interpret these charts sometimes. You have to put a little bit of extra thought into it. So just altitude 6,000, but there's no ATIS to get the level from, sadly. What about the course? Is the inbound course correct? Should be 099, 098. 1 degree out, that's just about acceptable for an RNAV. Minimum then, well, RADNAV, well, there's nothing to tune in here. The DME will be based on the threshold, so it's distance to runway 10, as you can see there. There is a VOR on the way, but I'll let that auto-tune. Progress page, GMMX. I'm starting to get confused now in my mind. GMMX, and it's going to be runway 10. Great. So that's our distance. That's how we're going to judge that most easily. We've missed our descent point, so let's get starting down. We know it's 6,000 feet in that hold. Were there any other restrictions on the way? Let's start down. Thrust idle, open descent, and let's have a look. Just make sure we haven't missed anything. Here, so MABAP, 6,500 after MABAP, 6,000 after LANBA, and that's fine. Wow, it's gone clear in front of us, yeah. Quite a different sort of scenery to what we're used to, so that's a good bit of fun. Good to go somewhere different. So I'm going to put in 6,500 feet for now, because I know that's the limit for us. And we can set the QNH, which was 1015. There it is. Because they're saying transition flight level, I think it'd be a bit higher. Let's raise that. Although obviously you'd get that from the ATIS, because it looks like we need to fly that on the QNH. So there we go, and that should stop flashing as a result. Excellent. Yeah, so we're going to fly around here. Then from Adalo, we're going to go left, activate the approach phase, and fly our RNAV. We're going to monitor that vertical profile, which we've got written nicely for us here, just to check it's all sensible. But yeah, easy to get mistaken and think that you've got more room than you have. So don't be fooled. We've only got a 5-mile final approach here to be ready. Then once we go visual, autopilot off, flight directors off, then we'll go to the bird to land on our runway 10. Then we're going to go right at Charlie 4, maybe Charlie 3, park in the terminal there. Sounds like a plan. We'll see ourselves entering this chart soon, I hope. Some high MSAs here, 14,000 feet. Wow. Yeah, there's some real terrain. Flaps 40, hello, thanks for joining us. Good to see you here again. DG27 agrees with Greece. And people are saying Samos as well. Good, there's another place to go and have a look at. Excellent. It's Astro Yuri, thanks for coming along. And there's Alipay, thanks for those recommendations. Let me just take a quick note of those. So check out TDG. Excellent. For Dubrovnik DS Creations. I'm still trying my best for to be able to install custom scenery. I almost got there with Gibraltar. Almost, but I didn't quite manage. So I have to keep working. I have to keep trying. Aurelie Croy. Thank you. DG27, would you have a stick on ND for 3 degrees letdown? Sorry, DG. I don't fully understand what you mean by that. Flaps 40? Yes, we're on VATSIM today. No problem at all, being late. We're doing 2 flights today. So this is our second one where we're going to finish up in Marrakesh, having headed south from Gibraltar to Casablanca. And now here we are. Let's get some more nice external shots while we come down. Yeah, lovely. Ian Morris says, if you miss your top of descent, would you typically put it into open descent, or would you let managed descent control the descent rate? Depends how high you are. So today, I'm in open descent because I just know it's going to go to thrust idle, and at 340 knots, there's no more room. It can't go any faster, and that's the problem with these high cost indexes. Because my descent was planned at this cost index of 60, which meant at 340 knots, if I went to managed, I can do that now, managed, it can't really, it hasn't really, well, actually, it's coming back to 250. So in this case, I think I'm going to stay in open descent. 250 is probably the limit for that arc, so we might have to slow down when we get there. If you're really high, open descent, speed brakes, and you can increase the speed. If you're a little bit high, managed descent is the best because it will gradually get you back onto profile and then leave you there, and it will moderate it. So if you can manage descent, but if you're really high, I'd go to open descent and give myself a bit more control. If you're in managed descent, the airplane may come up with a message, more drag. I haven't seen it on the ToLiss when it realizes you're not actually going to make it. So now I'm in open descent, but I need to select the speed, otherwise the plane will come back to that managed speed. And if we do that, because we're going faster, we'll see that we're actually gaining on the profile, even though I'm not doing anything with the speed brakes. Because I'm fast though, if I just go to manage speed, the airplane will try and slow down and we'll get high again. So I'm going to get below the profile, then go to manage speed and manage descent and let it carry back on. But we've got to get low first, and then it will regain the profile sort of from underneath because we've got more drag at this speed. Foxtrot says, can you still use config 3 with heavy wind and rain? Thanks for joining us, Foxtrot, if I didn't say so already. Yes, you can use config 3. Some people prefer it. It's just a flap landing. The reasons that will limit flap 3 would be your approach and your performance. So if the approach is steep, then you wouldn't want to do flap 3 because you'll have to be flying a faster approach, so you'll need a faster rate of descent and there's less drag, so the airplane will be hard to slow down. So now we've gone a bit low. Let's go to manage speed, manage descent, so speed and des, and let's see if it manages that. So it's going to raise the nose now as it tries to slow down, and then we'll see that we're 1,000 feet low, but that's going to come back in and it will get itself back onto profile. Yeah, so some pilots will prefer flap 3, even in crosswinds. A lot of pilots prefer flap full because you have the engine spooled up a bit more, so they're a bit more responsive at the higher thrust settings. Flap 3 has advantages though. You've got more energy in the airplane in the event of a wind shear or a go around. Okay, we're not going to select LS because we're doing an RNAV as we've already discussed. Plus 40, what is the green dot on the altimeter? That's showing us, it's called the donut or the yo-yo, people have different names for it. It shows us our deviation, so that is over 500 feet, or it's slightly over, it's that 600 feet high or above us. So we are 600 feet below the profile. If that was next to us, we are on profile. If it was below us, we would be high. So that's the altitude the computer is thinking we should be at. It's not always right, but that's what it's expecting. So you can see here, 1150. So I'm a little bit surprised. I thought we would regain that profile, but for some reason it seems to not be working. Usually as you slow down, you'd expect to see that deviation decrease. So I'm not sure what I've done there. But there we go. I have noticed sometimes the ToLiss deviation bug doesn't quite take into account different speed changes as well as it could do. You might expect it to. Okay, so after Lambo, we can go down to 6,000 feet. Let's get the seatbelt signs on, so I don't forget it later. And here we are doing a DME arc. I know people have asked about this. I suspect people were asking about flying it manually as opposed to like this, but it's in the coding for this arrival, so it will do the arc. Just got to be at the right speed and so on and follow the procedure. So after Lambo, we go to 6,000, then Odalo. After Odalo, we're going to head in. How many track miles do we have? We've got to remember the ground is closer to us, so 41 miles. We would need 10, 20, 30, about 40, but because we're 1,500 feet closer to the ground, yeah, we're probably pretty much on profile. Just going to keep the speed up a little bit to 250 knots. We'll reduce the speed as we get closer to that turn. Tevi says, hello, Tevi, thanks for joining us. Your rate of descent is now 30. Will that be uncomfortable for the passengers? What rate of descent will be comfortable for the passengers? Anything in the sort of normal range, so 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet per minute, people will feel it. They'll notice the airplane starts its descent, but once the airplane's in the descent, you don't really notice. If you're descending really fast, so sort of 5,000 feet per minute, then because of the nose low attitude, then people walking in the cabin will definitely feel it, and the cabin crew will feel it because they'll be pushing the heavy trolleys up and down, and they'll feel that angle. But once the airplane is settled, even with a high rate of descent, you won't really feel it because the G-force will still be about 1G. It's only when you're changing that rate of descent you can really feel it. So if I was going now to go into a really high speed descent, so I use thrust idle, put the speed up and use the speed brake, then you would feel it. You'd feel the airplane start its descent. But once it settles in that descent, you probably stop noticing, and it's quite hard to tell. Yeah, good question. Thanks for that. Yeah, flaps 40, exactly. It's a visual tool for us. Crossing Moon, no problem at all. See you soon. TG27, I thought the coding would have given a line on the ND display when your 3 degrees is needed on the platform. Yeah, so there'll be little blue arrows to show you when you're going to start your descent in the real airplane. But again, the ToLiss seems to struggle with that slightly. I'm going to go into vertical speed now and just take control because, as I've shown before, sometimes the Airbus managed speeds are a little bit optimistic. So managed speed and vertical speed. And we don't want to forget to activate the approach phase, so we'll do that now. As a result, we get our deviation scales showing up. But this, in reality, would be based, it's not reliable. At this point, we're too far out. It's just not reliable. It could be based on 3 degrees. It could have different altitudes in mind. So we're not going to use that for much. I think that's going to go on. Quick flyby. Tabby, no problem at all. Flaps 40, it does, but only with very severe weather. So it doesn't work as well as the real airplane. The real airplane would show us a lot of weather. It'd show us any sort of water in the air, really. Okay, let's keep it coming down. Once your speed's below 240, you start to get more options because we can use flap 1 and start getting the speed brakes out. How far are we from the runway? 22 miles, 9, 18, 27. Yeah. Okay, flight plan wise, how many miles? 27. Yeah, so we're definitely not sitting low, that's for sure. Yeah, about 200 feet high, the computer reckons. So we'll come around the turn and then get ready. Time to slow down. Now we can configure down this approach if we're using Final App, which is what we'll use today. But having said that, I don't want to do that today because it's such a short final approach from the platform altitude that would just mean we wouldn't be configured in time, most likely. Speed limits, Dalo max 250 and then 220 at MX 102. So we're going to meet that, no problem. So here's our left turn, nice and visual with all the terrain. And is that the inbound course of the runway ready to go for our visual segment? So that is 099. Oh, excellent. Some glare on the iPad. That's great. Okay, around the turn we go. We'll lose a bit of energy in the turn. Looks like a possible tailwind on approach though. So that could make this a bit trickier. Yes, a strong tailwind. So in this case, we're going to need to start configuring flaps to 1. Let's reduce that rate of descent. Now, if I can get flap 2 out, that will make my life a lot easier because that gives us a lot of drag. So flap 2 is the big helper if you're getting high. But you've got to slow down in the first place. Speed's increasing. Let's do that. Let's go to thrust idle open descent. So we're speed protected a little bit. How are we doing on the weight? 75.6. And this sim brief, because this is all different, uses landing 77.8. So yeah, we're close to our maximum. Let's get that speed right back. So to get down below those speeds, I'm going to have to select it. Otherwise, the engines will spool up at S, and it'll be quite hard to select flap 2. So I can select below. That's no problem. Now we're below flaps to 2. This can go down to 3,200 feet. Or this could be tricky. We might not make this. Let's see. Now I'm going to set the speed there. And we're in open descent. I need to be level by, when are we descending? The 102? No, 104 is our actual descent point. Okay, let's see how this goes. How high is the box thinking? About 300 feet high. Yeah, it's coming back in. So now we can start winding that speed back. Should have constraints really. That would help me out. There we go. 3,200 at 104. See, this is where these little blue arrows make your lives a lot easier. It shows you exactly when it expects to level off. So let's go to manage speed now. And we can pull the vertical speed. Even though we've got that 10 knot tailwind, so it's really making it difficult for the airplane to slow down. And this is really noticeable. 10 knot tailwind on final approach in real life would be a really noticeable thing, and you'd have to definitely account for it. Maybe put out the gear early, that sort of thing. So I've got 10 miles. I need to lose 2,000 feet. That'll take about 6 miles, and the speed's coming back. So I think we're pretty much on profile now. As I said, I'm going to get level at 3.2 to make sure that everything's working out fine. Little town, lovely. And there is Marrakesh. 4 reds, so we're below the 3 degrees from here. Good, that's all worked out. Get rid of the speed brakes. Didn't need those all that time, that's for sure. Okay, so we're in a really good place now. We've got the speed right back. We can configure and get ourselves down. Distance to the runway, set that to VOR. 12 miles from here. Great, and we're below 12,000 feet above the runway. Shortly, we expect our radio altimeter to come alive, so we need to be ready for that. Tailwind still 11 knot tailwind. So in a situation like this, yeah, you have to be careful. You wouldn't rush down or push it and being high. You'd make sure you've definitely got it right. So we're going for 4,500 for our go around altitude. What have I missed? What have I missed? Okay. So we're keeping a bit of a shallow descent, but a descent nonetheless, as we come in on final approach here to Marrakesh. Getting a bit of greener scenery around us. Excellent. The radio altimeter did come alive. Didn't say, oh, we missed it from my outside view, but there it is, so that's good. So QNH is roughly right. Let's see if there's any updated information. 101, oh, it's 1014 now. I don't know if the X-plane probably hasn't updated that yet. How are we doing then? We've got plenty of fuel, 4.6 tons of fuel, and there's 2,000 feet above the ground. That's fine. Level at the platform. As soon as we get out star, I'm going to arm the approach phase. And the reason is I don't want it to accidentally capture or try and fly up to VDEV or anything like that in the wrong timing. So there's that star. Arm approach. So we get app nav, final blue, out. Now we're expecting our descent. And in real life, you'd get a nice blue down arrow to show you. In RNAV approaches, it's less common to fly a continuous descent because you want to make sure you don't accidentally get the wrong modes here. Looks like it's pretty much straight down the runway though. This is a great advantage of RNAVs over VORs and NDBs because we can fly to these waypoints that are just in a straight line to the runway. Obviously for a VOR, the VOR would be off to the side and then we'd have to come in at an angle and then correct onto final. Okay, now we should be descending fairly shortly. I'd expect to see the VDEV scale in a moment. There it is. Gear down. Flaps to 3. Don't want to leave it too late because as you can hear the engine is pulled right up, which will make life difficult. Flaps to full. Let's check that going altitude. 4,500 feet is in there. And now we're on final approach. There's no controller here, that's good. I think I'll just broadcast just in case anyone's following us. Marrakesh traffic, jet set 219, final approach, runway 10 to land. Okay, how are we looking then? So, just one autopilot. We're using final app, so that's all we get. L deviation isn't displayed on all of them. A lot of them you have to monitor on here. It would show up if it was going too far wrong. Ah, the minima. We never put in the minima. That's terrible. So there we go. Well, we are visual and stable at 1,000 feet. So let's do autopilot off, flight directors off. Yeah, there we go. Terrible. And inbound course of 099. Bird on. Approaching 10 for landing. 3 reds. So we were talking about this earlier, weren't we, in the chat. So now it's just going to be a case of driving the airplane towards the middle of that touchdown zone. keeping our date and rate of descent. So I know it should be about, it was about 800. Oh, getting a little bit too twitchy there. Sitting on 3 reds. Slight difference in the vertical profiles. Just flying visually now, really. Bring up that PFD for you guys. Feels a little bit steeper than normal. There we go. Could be an effect of the runway. You wouldn't get that glide slope caution in the real airplane. Yeah, this seems to be a little bit high. I'm not sure there's something amiss here in the alignment, so there we go. Oh, need to get it down. Whoa, that was pushing it. Reverses, we're going for max reverse. Reverse green, decel. Yeah, there seems to be something interesting there. As we reach 70 knots, reverses to idle. Expecting to brakegate to the left. We'll take over from the brakes. Let it roll. Low taxi speeds. Yeah, I'd say we probably just about got away. The main wheel's probably just in the touchdown zone. But yeah, that seemed to be crossing the threshold a bit high on 2 whites, 2 reds. I wonder why. Maybe I've got something wrong. Yeah, I agree. It did look a bit steep. Good to see you've made it back. Glenn says -5. Did somebody... I can't believe it was -5. But yeah, where is the terminal? Have I got this wrong? Oh no, we wanted to go to the right, didn't we? What am I talking about? So, Charlie 3, let's take Charlie 3 to the right. And here we are. +5. There seems to be something slightly different about the alignment of the runway and the elevation. Let's have a look at that another time. Here we go then. Sun starting to set. Not much of a terminal here. 30+ degrees. Let's get ourselves off the runway. Yeah, guys, the landing rate thing is it's just built into the overlay I use, and I'm not entirely. I don't know when it takes its snapshot. It could be that I went up slightly before landing, which might have contributed or would have definitely contributed to that float. So it could be that it's taking a snapshot from there. I don't entirely know where it bases it on. It's slightly more. It's far beyond me. Okay, let's go to. We've come off at Charlie 3. I think we'll just go straight ahead into stand 4. Get that APU running. 2, 3. That light stays on. Those can go off. Definitely going to need the APU for this turnaround. We'll definitely need the brake fans. Disarm that. Flaps to 1. Thanks to that 31 degrees out there. Absolutely. And we haven't got the LS buttons on. But they're back to NVS for the next flight. Why not? That's how we're going to take off. And let's go in, right, and park. Excellent. DG27 Gatwick does have RNAV approaches, absolutely. There's the brakes hot message. We would have used quite a lot of energy. 650, wow. Now that is very hot. I wouldn't expect to see that even in these conditions. We'll put the fans on now. You'd be looking at, I'm not sure what temperature. There is a fuse in the tyre, so if it gets too hot, the fuse will go and it will just deflate the tyre. So you definitely don't want that. So yeah, 650 degrees, that would be a risk. That's very hot. Anything over 500 is hot. Over 500 is possible, but it's that is really hot. I have seen messages on the forum saying of blown tyres in the ToLiss. I suppose we were very heavy for landing, so they could have got pretty hot. Okay, lining up. So APU's available. That's good. Turn off these lights for parking. Looks like just a park-in stand. Flaps are at 1. Is that a stop line? So some places there'll be a line and the captain or first officer can look out and just stop when they see themselves in line with it. I don't know if that's what that's simulating, but it can be quite a useful way to get the aircraft in roughly the right place. Although as you can see, that's probably not quite far enough forwards. But there we go. Right, AP is available. Let's turn off these engines. Seatbelt signs off. Those engines pulled out. Great. Well, thank you very much. Welcome to Marrakesh, and I hope you enjoyed the flight and something slightly different there. We saw our RNAV approach. Let's get that. Oh, excuse me, beacon off. Oh, oh dear. All right. Well, that's definitely not good enough if we're rolling backwards. And there we go. So what we'll do now is have a quick look at the flight and the replay for that approach and landing. Let me disconnect from VATSIM. And let's have a quick look, see what happened, see if we can work out what went on that final approach. But thank you guys for sticking with it and joining me for 2 whole flights. First time we've done that. Next time I'm planning on heading east and west out to sea, head over to the Canary Islands, and then we'll see where we want to go from there. Hopefully we'll do that in the Neo modified version of this aeroplane. But yeah, thank you, Simon. Thanks for thanks for coming along, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. Cybercan and Ninja, arrivederci. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. Richard B, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, good. I'm glad the 2 sectors was a bit of fun, something else to see. Dougal, you're welcome. Thanks for your hard work, and thanks for moderating, Dougal and Liz. Always good to have some backup in the chat. Glenn, thanks for coming along. And yeah, I think maybe, Simon, runway slope could be something to do with it here. Let's have a look. Yeah, very interesting. I'm not sure about these. There's something strange about this approach. Maybe I've misread something in one of the charts. We'll have to have a look. Oh, see, we were very close. Just on the last touchdown zone markers. So I think it's something to do with the way we got close and then went up a tiny bit. I think that probably had the impact of +2 that time. But yeah, we definitely made it into the touchdown zone, which is what we were trying to achieve. Let's go for a good old wing view. Fantastic. Let's see what it looked like from there. Just in time. Excellent. Michael B, thanks for coming. Flaps 40, that's very kind. Glad you enjoyed it. And Matt Haynes, brilliant. Ashley Judkins, thanks for coming along. Yeah, +2. I'm not sure what's going on with the vertical speed, but there we go. And let's do one more. Not to be indulgent, but just because it's always nice to have that side by the runway view. External runway. And right. So guys, thank you so much. Like I say, hoping to stream in just a couple of days. Let's get right out to the edge of the touchdown zone so we can see it. And we'll head out to the Canaries. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming along. I hope to see you again in another video soon. I hope you will keep very safe and well, and have a great evening or rest of the day wherever you are. Thank you.